retire, and I'll never forget, he said, I always thought you'd be a good teacher. So that caused me to embark on a 30-some year career teaching, as well as doing some of the stuff that I really love to do, which is, I mean, I love it all, but teaching acting is hard because people's hearts are involved, and it's such a discouraging business, it's so tough. Yeah. It kind of, and you have to empathize with them, and it kind of sucks you dry sometimes.
Yeah, I think, when I moved out here in 2014, 2015, I think, to be honest, I was just kind of lost. And, I graduated from Arizona State with a degree in finance that I was really I didn't plan on ever using it. And I think I was just like, man, when you're in school and people ask you what you're doing, you can kind of say, if you're studying, you just say, I'm over at Arizona State. Oh, okay, cool. They leave you alone. And when I graduated, I didn't really have that. Now they're kind of expecting me to do something, and I was like, I guess I'll just move to LA and be an actor.
That's a great fallback.
And but really,
that's funny.
What a preposterous thing to think that you're just going to stroll up here because you're a decent-looking guy and you're tall.
Yeah.
And I really had no concept of, what it meant to be an actor at all. I still don't, to be honest.
No, I don't either. There's so much involved. I have a sense of it because I've been in it for 55 years, but you never know. Charles Conrad once said, that whatever you think acting is, it's not that, because it had nothing to do with this voice in our head. It's the thing that hears that voice. So you were just following your instincts, man. That's what I did too. Yeah. Got to be like a salmon spawning, Don't think about it, just go,
Well, if we're gonna be frank, I don't think it.
Well, I know. Let's. What is the opposite of frank? Francis. I don't know. Yes, let's be frank.
Yeah. I think it was a bad decision.
Well,
right. But like when I read your book, I can. It's like it's different. I see how it was like. It was like all or nothing. It was like we're gonna keep doing this, and especially I saw that Dark Delicacies book signing you did.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about how the only 2 capitalized words in the whole book are, hey, if you can do anything else but acting, do that.
Yeah. Sit down until the feeling passes. Yeah.
And I think that happened to me pretty quickly. Just because, like, again, just I was so lost. But I'm glad I met you. I always really liked you, and even if nothing really came of being an actor or anything, I always liked you a lot, personally, and I thought you were, man, I thought you were like just magic, in front of a camera, and sometimes I wonder, like, it seems like you would have been good no matter what kind of method you went with. You really think like
I don't know. That's a good question. I actually don't think I would have been as good. I think because I always, I was always brash in a certain way. I'm very shy personally. A lot of people don't believe that, but it's true. But when I've been performing, I have a tendency just to blow out, and just not give a rip. And so, but I tell you, man. But also, in order to do this, if you're lucky enough to get to do it, the most important thing is you have to be really sensitive. You have to be, you have to feel with your heart. And a lot of the way that these people are coaching students, it just messes with that, man, because it's all in your head, And you got to think about the time your dog died, so you can be sad, and all of that stuff. Even the guy that created it, who was Stanislavski, he, 3 years after he created that sense memory thing, he stopped it because he said. Stella Adler asked him why, or actually what happened was they were having breakfast in Paris. Stella Adler and Konstantin Stanislavski, who invented the method, and so first thing Konstantin said is, "What is Lee doing? We don't do that anymore for 2 reasons. First of all, if you think about bad things that happen to you often enough, you become inured to them. They no longer affect you, which is really kind of sick, And the other one he said that it led to our students having clinical depression because they were thinking about bad things that happened to them so much. Yeah. And when Stella told Lee, Lee Strasberg said, "I don't care what Stanislavski says, I say it works." Yeah. Yeah. So I think the question was, would I, if I had studied some other way, I think I would have gotten into my head and I wouldn't have been able to perform as well because
Okay.
what Charles taught was just the opposite. Like probably the thing I'm most known for is Field of Dreams. I'm forever grateful for that movie. But also, the one that got the most publicity for me, I did a movie called Up in the Air with George Clooney and Anna Kendrick, and I played an auto worker who got fired.
I've seen it. I remember.
Yeah, and that scene ended up on the Academy Awards twice.
I remember.
And the way I prepared for it was, because it was a tumultuous scene. The guy was finding out he was, everything was, and it was the climax. As it turns out, it was a climax in the movie. And so when I went to audition, I didn't do any of that crap that all these schools say, break it down, find the beats, figure out which word you're going to emphasize and all that. I treated it like, I just like a piece of marinating chicken. I just put it on the dresser, and the day came, and I grabbed it, hadn't looked at it, and I went down outside of the office. I looked at it, and I ran the words flat out loud in a monotone once. And I just felt all this stuff going on. So I went up and I did the audition, and she said, come back and see the director tomorrow, which is Ivan Reitman's kid, Jason Reitman. And so traditional acting would say, I should remember what I did, so I can do the same thing because it worked. Oh, it worked. I can do it again. But that wasn't it at all. You just go in with the same kind of madness, And so I did this, ran it flat out loud in a monotone, went in, and I feel like I'm dominating the conversation.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, cool. Well, it's a good story. Hell with it. It's a good
frankly, it's actually really impressive with the way you have all these details and the names that you remember.
Yeah,
all these projects. That's
when I've got my edibles balanced.
I just couldn't believe it was like reading. It was like that in the Bible where they have in Jacob was this.
He begat.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I guess just you've been doing it for so long.
Well, and also part of teaching is a lot of times telling these stories, because what I share with the students is I just share what worked for me. I mean, everybody in town wanted to play this guy. I think his name was Paul Morgan, and like the guy, the warden from Shawshank Redemption auditioned, and the guy from Saved by the Bell, the principal, so with the width and breadth. Yeah. And but what happened was, because I worked in this thing called Choiceless Awareness that I was taught, which is basically meditation, and which is just have clarity. And when I finished, I reading for the director, I found myself outside the office. Because the last line from the casting director was, "Go clean out your locker." And the next thing I know, I'm standing halfway down the stairs. There was one flight of stairs leading up to the office, and I kind of came to.
I just read that part.
Yeah.
I just finished reading that.
And I thought, because actors always wait after the audition for the director to redirect, because maybe they want to see something else, or, you don't. But I was outside, and I didn't even realize I was going to do that. And so I said, well, screw it,
Yeah.
And I left, and
yeah.
And like I said in the book, Sam Gold, one of the great producers, said in Hollywood nobody knows anything. But I'm pretty sure that I was the only actor out of the hundreds that they saw that didn't even give Jason Reitman a chance to say anything. And that might have contributed to why. I'm sure it contributed to why I got the part.
So before you found Charles Conrad, did you have any like method? Did you read books?
No, man, no. I was real good at playing Let's Pretend, and I had a lot of dreams of flying,
You started young, you said.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, it's really kind of funny. I mean, my first job was in first grade in my little grade school in this town of about 1,200 people, way out by the Nebraska border in Colorado. I mean, it's just prairie for hundreds of miles every direction, and my dad was a small town football coach there, so... And he had grown up there, and so our first grade class was doing a play, and it was called The Tenderfoot. And my mother was a wonderful musician. She played saxophone and piano, and she'd played in polka bands all over southern Colorado. Coal miner's daughter, but was what she was. But she was a tremendous musician. So they asked her to play the piano for the show, and I got the lead. So, like I say in the book, my first acting job was because of nepotism, Yeah. But it would just it really struck me because it was like a Joseph Campbell fable. How where you go on a search and you find a mentor or whatever, and all that stuff because it was about a kid that moves from the city to a small town. and all the other kids make fun of him because he's not country. He doesn't know anything about animals, and he's and so he's the first act is basically him, being really lonely, unhappy, and then. In the second act, there's a fire in a barn, and this kid goes in and saves 4 horses. And I'm getting choked up talking about it now. He saves 4 horses, and he becomes like the little hero of the town, all the kids. And the closing act was me singing, "I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande." And so it's a great memory, But I felt what it was like to perform, and I think it was like somebody's first. I mean, I can only like the first shot of heroin. I imagine what that's. I've never done. That's the one drug I didn't do with it. Well, along with meth, because I didn't want to die, But I experienced that, and that when I decided that was what I wanted to do.
See, and I always kind of felt like I always kind of envied those guys who knew what they wanted to do, like. Right away when they were young. I'll be 40 in about a year and a half, and you mentioned, I forget, I tried to find it. I went back in this book and I couldn't find it, but you mentioned somewhere, I think it was when you were still teaching in Tucson, or maybe it was right after you gave that speech on
the world. What is the living medical experiment? I'm a living medical experiment.
It was around that time. But you said in the book, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do this. And man, I felt like for me, that's been every year for me for maybe the last 20. Is just like I'm doing this thing, and I'm like, no, this isn't it. I still don't really know what it is yet. It's like, but I know it's not this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's this. And so like, just to go back to like when I first met you, like I come to LA thinking like, oh, this will be fun. This could work. And I never did a school play. I never went out for the drama club. And it was like, how could you not think of these things before you decide to up and move? Like, you know what I mean? So
you had a feeling. About it.
Yeah, but I think it was a silly.
Well, you can think whatever you want. When people say, "What do you think?" I always say, "Give me a topic. I can think about anything." But we got you to this point, and you seem like. I mean, again, we're going to end up sounding like we're blowing each other here. But you seem like a really evolved individual. Your mom and dad did a good job, and no, you don't try. You say, "Thank you, God damn it! I buy you books, and you use them for toilet paper."
Apologies.
Yeah, all right. They don't have to do that either. You remember what you have to say anytime you say you're sorry, right? Did we talk about that when you were in class?
You probably did, but it might not have been one of the things that stuck with me.
Actors are notoriously apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I just say, never say that, because it has a double meaning. It means you're saying you did something you regret, but it also means you're useless. That's the sorriest horse I've ever seen. So if you ever hear yourself say sorry, you should always think in your mind, "Fuck you, Steve." And I've had students call me after being gone from school 10 years, and they go, "I was in an audition, man, and I said I'm sorry, and all I could hear was 'fuck you, Steve.'"
Yeah,
that's fun.
Well,
but go on, man.
No, that's really all I was gonna say. Is just like you knew what you wanted to do pretty much from the get-go, which is again, I'm almost jealous because I feel like not too many people, especially in these days, because there's so much like distraction.
Oh yeah.
It's I'm really envious of like, man, these guys or girls who, when they're 5, 6, they want to be a sprinter, an actor, or whatever, and they don't even care about anything else. That's all they want to do. And but yeah, that's all I was going to say.
I sure that's absolutely. But the thing is that people come at this from all directions. Whatever it was, you ended up here. I always make kind of a joking comment, young man with a dream. And that's what I was, young man with a dream.
Yeah.
And sometimes sometimes the magic works and sometimes it doesn't, because like 6,000 people a month arrive in Los Angeles to be actors, and the vast majority of them are the homecoming kings, like yourself. You must be like a physical trainer or something. I mean, you're like a fucking Greek god. I mean, and believe me, that's just coming from a guy who appreciates athletes.
Yeah.
Because I were one at one point.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of them are the kids that were the homecoming kings and queen at the high school that say, oh, you should go to Hollywood, So the competition's unbelievable, So
yeah, but then I don't know, when you talk about how the way you do it really sets you apart, it almost kind of makes it so there isn't a lot of competition when you go in.
That's what good training should make you feel.
Yeah.
You should feel like you have an edge because of, it's not because you know what works, but it's because you know what doesn't work. You know that the one enemy we have is self-consciousness. That's it. It's the biggest, and that exists in your left brain, which is the thinking part of your consciousness. And so, if people walk in, and if they're self-conscious, if you're self-conscious when you walk in, it makes the people watching you self-conscious, and it makes them uneasy about hiring you, And if you don't think it's powerful, watch a comedian die on stage. Go to a club some night and watch a comedian. He becomes so self-conscious because his stuff's not working that you just feel like, oh my God, brother, please, just get off for now, come back when, it'll be better. So,
when they bomb out.
They bomb out, and then they don't get asked back,
I've never seen it, but I've heard enough comedians talk about it.
Well, that's why they call it, comedians talk about, I killed last night. Or some guy does a big number about that. But I did feel like that's what you mentioned something before about if I had been trained in any other way, would I still have progressed? Yeah. I don't think so, because I would have just been another stupid actor, outside in the waiting room with my script all marked up and acting with the wall and changing it at the last second. And,
so you never did any of that
stuff. The antithesis, man. You know what I do?
I mean, in the beginning, I know after.
No, it never made sense to me. It never, because I minored in drama. I went to the University of Northern Colorado, got my degree there, great little liberal arts school.
So you wouldn't have to do the set building?
Yeah, I didn't have to do the set building, so I minored in drama. But I took all the acting classes, and I just and I got good parts in the school productions, but none of that stuff ever resonated with me. It all seemed tinny, for lack of a better word.
They taught that stuff, right?
Well, what else is there? I mean,
right.
And what else are we doing in life that's the same that we did in 1930 when all this stuff was thought up? I mean, that's a big question that most actors don't ask, Yeah. But you hit upon it. You said you got to set yourself apart, because if they're looking for a pair of Siamese twins from Idaho that have black hair and blue eyes and are joined at the hip, you walk in, there's going to be 5 sets of Idaho twins with black hair and blue eyes, they're joined at the hip, because that's how many people want to do this, So you got to figure out, so especially if you're a young leading man, fuck, cheekbones can get you in the door, but then what do you got? Can you give it to me now, so the competition is just really tough. So I think that the fact that I have had auditions where the producers will come up to me when I'm first on the set, and they'll say, you got the job when you walked in the door. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, nobody else walked in the door the way you did. And that has to do with this being insouciant, without care. If you hire me, you have wonderful taste. If you don't hire me, no offense, but fuck you. I'm not doing this for you anyway. I'm doing this because that's what I am. And so many actors go in and they research what they should talk to the director about, a previous project, and they try to get, what's the sense, what's the writing style of the series, and it just clutters up your mind, and then you walk in with this, you come off as needy. You come off as, I hope I do well, I hope. And and it's an interesting thing. It's this thing about hope and fear, because everybody thinks hope is a good thing, and it's not. Faith is a good thing, not faith in some guy in a white gown in the sky sitting on a throne, but faith, just a feeling of I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing right here, right now. And if you hope, then your hope places your happiness with some future circumstance. And there's a great song in a chorus line, oh, I hope I get it. I hope I get, it's unhealthy, and it takes you out of the moment. And then the other thing is you're either afraid you're going to screw up or you hope you're going to do well. And that's why in the Shambhala tradition, they call that the twin dragons at the gates of heaven, because you have to let go of fear and you have to let go of hope, and then you can be really present. And I love that aspect of studying this, because I found, again, that if you really are talking about the creative creative power of human beings, you're talking about religion, in a certain way. But it's not religion in terms of dogma. It's just, and how are you experiencing life? How do you are you following your bliss? Have you awakened, like Joseph Campbell says? Have you awakened to the awe? That's the thing.
I remember some of the books you recommended, and obviously,
that's my daughter. Can I talk to her?
No problem.
Oh, you talk about an artist. Listen, she's had 4 plays produced in Los Angeles without putting a single dime of her own money in.
I thought it was 5. I thought
5. You're right. It is 5.
Yeah,
the most recent one was here at the Theater of Note. It's a wonderful thing about the beginning of the film business, and now the second act is what it's like now with virtual reality. Yeah. And I adore both my girls are. I have 2 daughters that are these Amazon goddesses that are kind and tough. I think my marriage scared them off for a marriage, but it was it's nice to have her.
Yeah, around. I remember when I was there. I think I went to see Shane once at Zombie Joe's.
Oh yeah, the famous Zombie Joe's. Man, that's theater in the raw.
Are they still?
No, he. Matter of fact, assuming I don't care, he turned out to not be a very straight up guy. And
is that right?
So they had a falling out. Yeah. But Shane grew immensely there. She found her footing as a writer, which I'm so. And she also is a songwriter. She was in a band called Spider Problem, and she was a lead singer, and she wrote a song called "Cha Cha Be My New Boyfriend," and they used it on David Duchovny's series Californication.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah,
and then they ended up putting it on the DVD when they had the best music of the 5 years of the show. And
that's a great show.
Oh yeah, I never saw it, but David is a friend,
on it, right?
No, excuse me. Yeah, I had one of the. I have the show that I did, the X-Files I did, according to Chris Carter.
That was X-Files.
Yeah,
Chris. 4,
number 4 out of 200 episodes. It was the fourth most popular episode. I heard that from Chris. I ran into him in Santa Barbara, and
that's great.
Yeah,
some of the stories you tell in here, I can't even believe. I mean, I know you're not making them up. It's just. You do that episode, and then how long goes by, and you run into the guy in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, 8 or 9 years later, in a little market restaurant there up on a hill. It's real. I was dating a lovely girl from Santa Barbara. Yeah. I mean, I look, man. Look, man. But the real story of this to me is meaningful coincidences, the synchronicity. I guess even the fact you and I are having this conversation now. And Charles used to. Charles or Prem Rawat, my meditation teacher. One of them would always talk about the divinity of the moment. If you really best yourself in the moment, then meaningful coincidences happen around you. And it's like when I went for the baseball tryout of Field of Dreams, and the baseball advisor on the movie turned out to be a best friend of one of my father's best friends. And I mean, what are the chances?
Yeah. So this after your agent says she's not going to.
Yeah. You're too old. And ironically, the guy that I played was 38.
Same exact age.
Yeah, same exact age. And the reason he threw the game in 1919 was because he was on his way out. He'd ruined his arm. He was 38, and he was broke because Charles Comiskey wasn't paying him any. When they won the pennant, Charles Comiskey got him a case of champagne that had gone flat. He got a deal on it because it had gone flat.
This was in,
and they had to wash. What
year was this?
1919, when the Black Sox scandal happened, and they had to wash their own uniforms. And he was just a real miser.
Is this the owner? Or?
Yeah, Charlie Comiskey. As a matter of fact, White Sox Stadium is still called Comiskey Park. Yeah, the whole story about that was just. And having that conversation with my dad when I was 8, and I told him that I either wanted to be a Major League Baseball pitcher or a movie actor. And 30 years later, I'm standing on the mound.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much you loved baseball. I mean, you were in all those softball leagues. What was the one called? What?
Oh, the B'nai B'rith BBs. That was.
You were Steve Epstein.
Steve Epstein. Yeah. In the newsletter.
Like if they.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but that's what happened. And the funny thing was, I was doing this. Lois and Clark episode, and the first assistant director's name was Scott Eastin, and he spelled it with an O, which is the common spelling. We're an I.
Yeah.
But I mentioned to him, I said, hey, man, I got to tell you, I said, yeah, my name's Eastin too. And he goes, well, my real name's Epstein. And I go, why did you change it? Well, because of anti-Semitism. And I said, well, I got to tell you, I'm playing on this softball team where I was Eastin, and they changed my name to Epstein. So, yeah, what are the chances of that happening? It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is, you recommended books to us all the time. And I went out and I bought the Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I bought Letters from a Young Poet.
Oh, Rainer Rilke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought the Shambhala one.
Yeah,
and I bought the Joseph Campbell one. I really couldn't get into any of them, but this book I read exclusively for maybe 3 years. I had a number of those essays almost committed to memory. Self-reliance, character, the poet, friendship, history. I mean, there was a time where you could open up the page, and if you gave me a line, I could probably read for a few pages straight. That book, I don't know. I don't know what it was about Emerson, but the prose, he kind of ruined me for everybody else. I really can't read any of the books. I don't know how I got through your book in almost 2 days, because most of the time when I start reading a book, after about 10 or 15 pages, I fall asleep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if I'm reading a manual about how to put together, an office desk, that prose better be fucking sharp, or I can't read it.
Right.
And, thanks to Emerson because of that. But, yeah, I owe you a real debt of gratitude for putting me on to Emerson.
Well, he's considered to be, the finest essayist. And it's ironic because he and Henry David Thoreau are considered to be the finest essayists in American letters, and they lived at exactly the same time in exactly the same town.
Yeah.
I mean, when you step back from that, that's a miracle of itself,
Was it Walden, or what was the name?
Walden was Henry David Thoreau. I mean, and there's a wonderful.
Was that not the town that they?
Walden was a pond.
Okay.
The pond where Henry David Thoreau lived on the banks of the pond for a year just to find simplicity, and that's where he did most of his writing. Yeah. But there's a wonderful one-act play called The Night that Thoreau spent in jail. And what happened was, and this is really timely for what's happening in the world right now, especially the United States of America. They wanted these people, even back then in the 1870s and 60s, there was some developer wanted to put some cabins around on Walden Pond. And Ralph Waldo and Henry David Thoreau said no. And he led a protest, and that's where Gandhi got, what do they call it? When you don't physically fight, but you just don't move. There's a term, some kind of civil disobedience.
Okay.
So Thoreau invented civil disobedience, and so they threw him in jail. And one night, Thoreau or Emerson was walking by the jail, and he saw Thoreau, and he said, "Henry, what are you doing in there?" And the famous line is, Henry David Thoreau said to Emerson, "Ralph, what are you doing out there? Yeah. You should be in here with us because this is right." Yeah. And now they've got people being, exported to the prisons, secret prisons, gulags. It's crazy. So, and civil disobedience will become part of it's already happening with all the big rallies that are happening around Bernie and AOC. So, it's interesting to have been turned on to Emerson in 1967 was when I was assigned to read my favorite, Self-Reliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good one.
Yeah. It's funny because, I cut out the quote from Self-Reliance says, "Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist." And, that standing out again, that's it. And so I actually typed that up and taped it to the top of a little metal can, like an ammo can, where I used to keep my transcripts and my weed, the important stuff. And I still have it, and that piece of paper is now all shriveled up. You can't read it, but it's still on top of it. Something like 50 some years later, you know.
Okay.
We're still talking about them, you know.
Yeah. I hope we continue to as well. But yeah, you mentioned in the book, I needed some clarification on something, because you mentioned you were at I think the Huntington Library.
Yeah.
And you saw I guess, what do they call it? Like a
display.
Yeah. Emerson.
Well, yeah.
There was a handwritten. And are you telling me that you own that now?
Oh, yeah. And monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Okay.
No, of course not, man. That is probably one of the most valuable artifacts. You know, that's why it's in the Hunting Library. But it just so of all the essays he wrote, the very one that actually, you know, and it was on Charles's reading list when I went to the Charles Conrad studio too. So he's been a through line for a big part of my life. Yeah. You know, so that and then it ended up with. You know, and I didn't see it. I was looking at Jack London, because at the Huntington Library they have these big displays of every author.
I've still never been there.
It's wonderful, and it's called the Library actually. And I heard my sister go, Stephen, and I said, what? And she goes, and I looked, and there was Henry David, and there was Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I walked over and I looked down, and it was open, and it was a handwritten copy that he had done himself of Self-Reliance. And I thought, man, that's again. Meaningful coincidences, you know, make your heart soar like a hawk, you know.
Yeah. I gotta say, when I first saw the post that you had written this book, I loved the title. I thought it was more of like an analogy.
No,
I had no idea. So what happened?
It's literal. Yeah. Your
mom was with her cousin.
Yeah. What happened was my mom and dad met at the University of Northern Colorado, and it's one of the great cute meet stories in history. If you want to hear it? We have time. Okay. All right. Well, you know, my dad had come back from WW2. He was on a destroyer in the Pacific. 17 years old, you know, but he enrolled at what was called Colorado State College at that time, and it was a teacher's college because he wanted to be a coach. And my mom had grown up as a coal miner's daughter down in southern Colorado, and then they worked their way into, you know, out of the mines. But her parents sent her up to Colorado State College to get away from some abusive boyfriend or something. And there was a quad area in the middle of the university, which is a big open area where the students would gather and they'd sit and talk and flirt and whatever students do. Yeah. And my dad was playing a pickup football game in that area because he was a good athlete. That's why I wanted to be a coach. And he went out for a pass, and my mom was walking down this gravel walkway across the quad, and he didn't see her, and he knocked her down, and she had a skirt on, and so her knees got really scraped up. Yeah. So he helped her up and apologized, and then he found out that she had to go into the hospital because she got blood poisoning from getting knocked down. And
are we talking like sepsis, right?
Well, so not that bad, because antibiotics actually worked back then, you know, because they weren't putting them in all our beef, our cat, you know. Yeah. But anyhow, so he went to visit her, you know, because he had caused it, so he felt bad. Yeah. And she invited him to the Sadie Hawkins dance, and which was a dance they would have every year where women would ask the men, And 8 months later, they were married in Cheyenne, Colorado. And so, like I said in a speech I gave at the university, I said, "Yeah, so my father knocked my mother down, and then he knocked her up." You know, she's 8 months pregnant with me, and she's big. She got big, and so she wanted to go down and visit her father, who I was named after, Steve Vukovich. He was a coal miner, and he had black lung disease, so she was sick. So she wanted to go down and spend some time with him. Yeah, and so she went down there, and my dad hitchhiked back up to Greeley, and one of her cousins asked her if she wanted to go to a dance in Fort Garland, which is about 50 miles from Walsenburg, where my mom grew up. Yeah. But it's on the other side of Levita Pass. And Levita Pass is a 9,000-foot pass, which is it's really low by Wolf Creek is 12,000 feet. But it's really a lot of switchbacks, and so they went over for the dance in this 1945 car or something, and they were coming back, and her cousin was driving, and her cousin's girlfriend was sitting in the middle, and my mom, pregnant, was sitting at shotgun, and as they were coming back, the cousin started playing chicken with another car, you know, and he hit the south shoulder. They said he was going close to 90 miles an hour, but I don't believe that. they said. And
because you think everyone would have.
well, what happened was the cousin was killed. They flipped end over end 3 times, and the cousin was killed, and his girlfriend was paralyzed from the chest down, and my mom was kept from going through the windshield, which was real glass, by me because she was so big. She got stuck, and her foot almost got her ankle was really screwed up. So she went into premature labor, and so that's how at 4 o'clock in the morning of that time, that's when I made my dramatic entrance, as I say, your
first of many.
My first, and other dramatic entrances. Yeah.
So she got launched like partially through
the windshield. Yeah, and survived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so her foot was the same after that.
She had this big jagged scar on her ankle her whole life, But she was a dancing fool. Yeah, she was a live wire, that one. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's wild. There's a bunch of stuff in here I wanted to talk to you about, just because I'm reading through this and I'm like, man, this is an interesting story, but I'm like, yeah, but how did this happen? I'm like, hey, what about this? So I've got all these pages.
Oh, that's what's fun. Let me ask.
Yeah. So, Steve, right here, this is chapter 29. Yeah, you talk about. This is the one where you're with, it's Andy Griffith, Cliff Robertson, and me. And it's that scene where the director says, no, Cliff.
The kid's right.
Say it just like that.
Yeah, kid's right. He said the kid's right. He should say it just like that.
Did that happen to you often? Where?
Well, it happened on,
I there was another story.
X-Files.
Yeah.
The X-Files was huge, man.
Right.
Yeah, that was huge.
Because on X-Files, they're telling you, hey, take it down.
Not they, the director.
The director.
And it was the first day of filming the first scene.
Yeah.
And it was all me, blah, 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 walking and talking through this beautiful primeval British Columbian forest on the way to a plane crash site.
Yeah.
A lot of dialogue, really involved. A lot of the camera move is very complicated. And so you don't want to have to do that more than once or twice, because the crew starts to not like you so much, because you're going to keep them late.
Yeah.
You want to the actor's goal is get it on the first one, get the crew home early. If you have that as a goal, everything else
honestly
works.
Though, I mean, like you talk about that golden hour where everyone's making like double time. Like if you're on the crew, wouldn't you like love that?
Well, you would, but that doesn't start until 12 hours. They'd like to get out of there in 8, and because there's always overages. There was a big scandal about this, that they were making the crew work too many hours when this family man died on the 405 freeway, and he was coming back and he'd done 22 hours.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I mean, and the great director Haskell Wexler, the great director, Bound for Glory, and what's that great Peter Sellers film, Being There? That's Haskell Wexler, and he started this whole movement to get the crew home. And I always thought, if you do that, you're doing good work, so keep it simple, get the crew home, And I had a great thing happen. It was so fun, I was coming out of Paramount at an audition, and if you go in on the Gower side, there's a lot of false fronts as you walk to go to the correct one to go through, get out through the door. And so I'm walking, and I see...
This is at Gower Studios?
Yeah, no, Paramount. Actually, Paramount on Gower. Because on the backside of Paramount's on Gower, but that's where there's an audition entrance there.
Okay.
And so I'm walking after an audition, and I look, and there's about 20, 30, Teamsters and crew guys all hanging around by this truck. And I say, hey, fellas, and they say, hey, hi. And I went in, and... I went in the wrong one. It was a false front. So I get in there and I realize this isn't the exit. So now I'm going to have to walk back out. And these guys know because they work there, So I thought it was pretty funny. But I thought, oh boy. So I walk out, and I'll be darned if these guys hadn't come over and were waiting for me. Go, hey, Steve, how are you, man? Yeah. Good. And it meant a lot to me, because these guys, they work really hard. It's a collaborative medium, and all the real. The guys that I admire, like Mark Harmon, and who'd I do? Anthony Hopkins. They're just so wonderful. They treat the lowest member of the crew just like they treat the top guest star and stuff. And that always kind of appeals to me. What was the question?
Well, it was just you're doing good stuff, and some guy comes up and says, "Hey, that's no good.
Oh, yeah.
And some other bigger guy says, no, he's good.
Well,
let him be.
That was the man. You know, that's really a highlight for when I was writing the book. Recounting that was because it's hilarious. You know, I mean, because I went when I auditioned for the X-Files.
You start freaking out. Like the line is, Mom, coming home.
I couldn't cut it, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm coming home. Yeah, I always think about that. But minor league baseball players when they finally have to give it up, you know.
That's so funny.
But so when I auditioned for it, I didn't. It was a show on the rise, but I wasn't aware of it. I'd never seen it, but I kind of heard of it.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of the second season, and. But it started to get a big following. And so I went to the audition. There was this silver-haired guy sitting there, and I thought he was a casting associate. And I did the audition, and I booked it. And that was unusual because American actors couldn't work in Canada without this whole special arrangement. It was really kind of unfair.
Is that still a thing?
I don't know. I haven't. Once you work there, you don't have to worry about it anymore. They just have to pay the fee one time.
Okay.
But I booked it, you know, and it was exciting because that was one of the first jobs I went out on after I'd signed with Harry Gold, who's a good agent. And so, you know, it's the first day of filming, and we get out of the car, and I'm walking with Duchovny and Jillian, and you know they're just as sweet as they can be, and I'm telling them about this, you know, I called you guys because the kids in town are acting really really weird, and now this has happened, and the guy that was in the plane that we're go see that we crashed, he was the guy who delivered my son, and just details. It's called exposition. It was the opening of the episode, so you're kind of laying the groundwork.
Yeah.
And so we get there, and we finally finish, and because there's a lot of dialogue, you know. I go, okay, got through, great. But then I hear this guy go, Steve, and you know what you want to hear is print.
Yeah, and in the book you say you hear cut, Steve.
Yeah,
and
cut.
You want to hear cut.
Print, yeah, and then ideally New Deal, because that means we're moving, and then boy, the crew gets really excited because we don't have to stand in just the same spot.
Does that mean like we're on to the next scene?
Yeah, New Deal means that we got it.
Okay,
you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the guy's name's Win Phelps, and he's very sweet. You know, he's an older gentleman. He comes over, and he did what good directors do. He didn't direct me in front of everybody. He put his arm on my shoulder, and I went, "Oh fuck!"
Yeah,
because I knew that was not necessarily. And he pulls me aside, and he goes, "Steve, this is the X-Files. You know, we do everything here really, really kind of flat. You know, so just take all the emotion out of it."
He's not being a jerk. He's
just trying. He's laying down our working relationship. It was the first thing he directed me, you know. So I said no problem. And the way that we're trained to work with Charles Conrad, it's easy because we can just do it the way he said, because I don't even remember what I did, you know. And so we finished the second take, and you know, again they had to reset. It's a long walk and talk, so there's dolly track, and I mean it's just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So we do it again, and I finish, and I hear cut, Steve, and I go, oh shit. Fuck, Mom! I got close, Mom, but I couldn't cut it. I'm coming home, and he comes over, and he says, "Steve, you see that guy standing over there?" And I look over, and it's the guy that was in the casting office, you know. And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, that's Chris Carter, and he created the X-Files, and he wrote this episode, and he would like you to go back doing it the way that you were doing it."
Yeah.
And then it was on like Donkey Kong. I mean.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, it right through like in the middle of it, I have to find my dead son. Yeah. And the director came over, and he said, "Let me guess, Steve, you don't want to rehearse this, do you?" Because you know, I always say, "Let's get the first take," because that's when it's the first time. You only get the first time one time. Yeah. And he said, "You don't want to rehearse this, do you?" And I said, why would I want to find my dead son twice?" Yeah. You know, and then it was print New Deal after that take. And then in the last scene, I killed a cigarette smoking man as he's about to kill Duchovny. And the script just said, Sheriff Mazeroski shoots the cigarette smoking man. And so I went up. And
you're Sheriff.
Sheriff Mazeroski. Yeah. So I went over to the director, Win Phelps, by this time, who was, whatever you say. And I said, "Listen, this is what I'd like to do, Win. I'd like to fire all the bullets in my gun, and then I'd like to just keep shooting, because I know this is the guy that killed my son, and so I keep shooting, and on the empty chambers." And he looked at me for a long moment, and we were in golden time. This was the end of the episode, so they were spending a shitload of money because everybody was on double pay and everything. And he said, I'm going to get back to you. And he stopped production and he went to call Bob Goodwin, who was a producer of the X-Files. And had a hard time reaching him because Bob was out to dinner in Bellingham, Washington, which is south of Vancouver. That's where the Americans would live, you know.
Okay, real quick. And Bob Goodwin's like one of the senior studio executives, right?
Well, Bob Goodwin, he also was a producer of Hill Street Blues that I worked on, 20 years before. So,
he has to go way up the chain for this.
Well, he was the producer on The X-Files, which was one of the biggest shows that 20th Century Fox had going, So every decision was important, and anytime you start messing with the script, that's a big deal, because it can get out of hand, So, but so they finally found Bob Goodwin in a restaurant, and he got the okay, and so they came back, and they wasted an hour. It took an hour for this, an hour of golden time to see if they would. He was and when you watch the episode, it's really fun because Jillian comes over and very gently takes the gun out of my hand, But it's really good stuff. Everything about it is appealing. That song, I Don't Want to Grow Up. What is it? No, it's from Pinocchio. An Actor's Life for Me, Hi Diddly Dee. It's like my dad said, Steve retired when he was 24, and now he has to go to work.
I mean, and I feel like that's not something they're going to do for any old actor who asks, hey, can I do this with a red hat instead of a blue hat? No, put the red hat on and go over there.
Yeah. That's right. It's a fine balance. That's why Con Air was such an amazing, really amazing thing for me. I mean, the stories about Field of Dreams are my favorites just because they were so heartfelt, but Con Air.
Yeah, man, I'm getting choked up when you get choked up. Go easy, all right?
Yeah. Like I have a buffer, like they said in The Godfather. Yes, Senator, I was a buffer. You can't help it. When you train in this way, you just when you become awestruck, it's tears of joy. That's a gift. That's a gift from the Creator. Yeah, good woman that she is.
Yeah, so I mean, tell us about that on Con Air.
Oh well,
you basically had free reign.
Yeah, well, this is how it happened. This is the craziest thing, man. I got called in to audition for the part of John Cusack's boss, and I knew it was a Jerry Bruckheimer film, so I know it's big, really big, and then I knew it was Nick Cage, who was really at the height of his powers. I mean, he's still to me at the height of his powers, but he was Elvis. And
what year was that? Was that
98 or something? Malkovich was in it, and this young newcomer named Dave Chappelle. Yeah, and but I didn't know
that was right around the time when they did like Gone in 60 Seconds and all those other...
I guess, yeah. I think it was after Leaving Las Vegas, which is one of the great bravura performances by an actor I've ever seen. Nick in Leaving Las Vegas is... Okay. He's the standard. It's Brando-esque, But anyhow, so they had me in to read for the part of Cusack's boss, and this guy was an idiot. He's the guy who goes after the wrong plane, and they make fun of him. They make fun of him when Cusack's behind him, and because the guy gives the same speech every time to the guards before they go on the plane and all that.
Yeah, so this is the role you were originally going
that's the one that they but the night before the audition, I was just flipping through the script because just for whatever, and I saw this line, and the line was, if any of you so much as passes gas in my direction or defends my delicate nasal passages, your testicles will become my personal property. And I thought, shit, that's Shakespearean, man. That's beautiful. Your testicles will become my personal. So after I finished the audition for Cusack's boss, I said to Vicky Thomas, it was Vicky Thomas and Matthew Berry.
Can I stop you real quick? Mm-hmm. So did they send you the whole script?
Yeah. That's one of the bonuses you get when you get up to a certain level. Now they just email it, Okay. But I don't. It's not necessary for me because I don't. I only read the parts that I'm in, and it's not because I'm arrogant. It's just because why would I know things that I wouldn't know? Okay. But so I said, Vicky, I know this is a Bruckheimer film. I know this is a great opportunity. Thank you, but this guy's an idiot. I said, what's the story of that crazy guard foul zone? And she goes, do you want to read for Falzone? I go, yeah. She goes, we don't have any time, because it was like 30 people in the waiting room, and it was, it's big.
Yeah.
And I said, she said we didn't have any time because of Charles Conrad. I said, I don't care, because we don't need time, and because it's basically instinctive, and so. She said, okay, because it was a huge speech. It was a speech where the guard welcomes him on the plane. Where he says, I see a lot of celebrities on this aircraft. I see 9 hard copies, 10 current affairs, and a genuine Geraldo interviewee. Got to tell you, gentlemen, none of this impresses me as a lolly kindergarten. You keep your hands to yourself, keep the decibel level down, and if you need to feel the need to scream, spit, or bite, you get the treatment. And, just beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I just went out in the hallway. She said, go out and look it over. All right. So I went out and bounced off the walls for a second, came back in. Then when we finished, Matthew Berry said to Vicki Thomas, I think we found our Falzone. And so I was excited. And then I didn't hear anything. A week went by. And if you don't hear anything within a week, it's pretty much, you got to be very practiced at letting things go. But this one stuck in my craw a little bit because, I can tell when people are bullshitting, pretty much. But so another week went by, and I got to part on this little movie called Little Bigfoot with Michael Fishman when he was 12 years old. We shot it up in the mountains. My girls, they were with me because of the divorce and stuff. So we had a nice time. I came back, and my agent called and said, you booked Conair. And after a month, and I said, well, what took so long? And my agent said, well, they wanted me to tell you they liked what you did so much, they rewrote the script to give you more to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, okay. So I show up the first day of filming, and my daughters are with me, and there's this very skinny black kid over in the corner because Utah is relentlessly Caucasian.
My dad lives in Park City.
Well, yeah. Unless you're playing at BYU, it's stunning how pure white it is. Not necessarily overtly racist or anything, but that's just the way it is. Yeah. So he looked like he felt out of place. So I went over to him and said, hey man, are you here to do the movie? And he goes, yeah, I am. And I go, yeah, I'm Steve Eastin. He goes, oh yeah, I'm Dave Chappelle. And I say, you want to come up to my room and smoke a joint? And he went, yeah, man, thank you. So we became great friends. And so on the first day of filming, it was a test shoot where they were checking the tattoos and everything. So it consisted of me standing in one spot on the tarmac of the airport, and all these actors would come up and stand next to me and then move on. It was Nick Cage, John Malkovich, Ving Rhames, Michael T. Williamson, Steve Buscemi, Danny Trejo, quite a lineup, and I had a Marine Corps tattoo on my arm, and so as I'm standing there, this tall guy comes over. And he says, Steve, I'm Scott Rosenberg, and I wrote Conair, and I want to talk to you. And I thought he was going to say and writers have every right to say this, please say the words like I wrote them because I worked hard on this, But he didn't say that. He said, listen, this is tattooed in my brain. I'm not making this up because it was momentous. He said, we think you're a great actor. We think you're perfect for the part, but the real reason we hired you is all the crazy shit you said in the audition, and I want you to do that all through my movie. Anytime you feel like saying anything, you just go ahead.
Yeah.
That's never happened. So the first day of filming, here comes Dave Chappelle, and I said, "Oh, look at this walking penis, boy! You are one skinny Negro." And when Michael T. Williamson came up to me, he had folded his handkerchief. In prison, they had these really ornate handkerchiefs that they fold to wear. And as he's walking him, I said, oh, look at this fucking fashion statement. Do-rag, gotta go, homeboy. And I reached up and I snatched it off his head and I threw it on the ground.
Yeah.
And I saw Michael go over to the director, Simon West, after the take. And so I kind of sidled over so I could hear what was going on. And Michael T. said, Simon, I want her to wear that all through the movie. And Simon West said, he's British. And he said, well, I'm sorry, Michael T. Falzone says you can't take it on the plane.
Hilarious.
It was so fucking hilarious. But then, and then at the end of the day, Chappelle comes over and says, hey, man, you're saying shit that ain't in the script. Can we do that? And I said, yeah, if it's good. Yeah. And, of course, saying that to Dave Chappelle was like, giving rocket fuel to a dragster, And my favorite one, the favorite improv I had with him, and I'll tell you, he'll remember this. I know we haven't talked in a long time, but this is how detail-oriented big productions are. I look in their mouths when I'm searching them to get them on the plane. I go through their hair and look in their mouths. Okay. And they wanted to explain why I didn't see the string that was tied to Dave Chappelle's tooth that was attached to the envelope that had the gasoline and the match in it that he lights the Indian on fire to create a distraction when they take over the plane. Whew, that's a long sentence. But so they wanted to explain that, you know.
Yeah.
And so they called us back to Disney, and they had a mock-up of the plane, and Dave Chappelle walks up, and what they wrote was, Chappelle was supposed to say, I was supposed to say, "Oh man, your breath really stinks." I was supposed to get close to his face and then recoil.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to say, "Oh man, your breath really stinks." And he was supposed to say, "I've been eating garlic. I haven't had a cold for a month." And we looked at each other and went, that's kind of it's weak, you know. So the director came over by that time. He just knew to just cut us both loose. He said, "Okay, well, you guys just do whatever you want." So the one they ended up using was, I lean over and I recoil and I go, "Oh man, it smells like someone shit in your mouth." And Chappelle said, "Well, he said he loved me." That's the one they used in the movie.
Yeah.
It's a little different. And then they cleaned it up for television. They say, in television, they had me dub, "Oh man, it smells like someone put socks in your mouth."
Yeah, so I remember back when there was like movies on TV that were censored, they would call you guys back to do...
Well, we would usually do it right as they were doing post-production on the film. They anticipated having to do that, so they would do that dubbing. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember there was another part that you were talking about in the book where God, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it'll come to me in these notes. But it was when you were going out for that part, Richard Lang, MGM.
Oh yeah.
Where
good memory.
You run into the guy.
Yeah, it's Lynn Stallmaster, the guy that cast the biggest, the dean of, other than Hoyt Bowers. He is the dean of Hollywood casting directors.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's another great story about meaningful coincidences and synchronicity. You know, yeah. I mean, I had met when I was in Tucson, and I was at the U of A. I taught there for a semester before I couldn't take it anymore. I was in grad school, and I quit and became a stuntman at Old Tucson. But that's how I got into the film business. But what was I talking about?
Well, I think this was the one.
Oh, Richard Lang. Yeah. So I had met this man, this guy that I played intramural football at the U of A, and the guy that played quarterback the year before I did, he said, "I want you to come down to the Arizona Inn. There's a couple of people I'd like you to meet." Because I'd been doing Petrocelli, the Paramount series, in little bit parts. And I go down, and it was this guy named Hal Gefsky and this guy named Hoyt Bowers. And we just had a brief conversation, and when I came to L.A., I contacted him. It turned out that Hal Gefsky was one of the founders of APA, and Hoyt Bowers was the head of casting at Paramount. And so and when I first went to see him, they were so beautiful. Where's your training? They really didn't want to think that anybody could, just because they know how hard it is to get to do this. I think they kind of wanted me to be able to say that I did it for myself. They didn't open any doors, but they gave me great advice, Yeah. And so when I went to see him initially, I just realized, so I didn't bug him. I just started studying with Charles, and I drop off a pack of Camels to Hoyt every once in a while over at Paramount, just stay in touch. And finally, after I was living with Susan Terrell, that's a whole another story, man.
Yeah, is that who you refer to as Susu?
Susu, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a stunning coincidence that was. But I was... She lost the lease on her place in Hancock Park, so I was looking for a place to live. And Hal would have people stay at his house sometimes and help out around there. So I just took a shot, and I said, "Hey, Hal, I have to move. Do you have any openings up there? Can I help you out?" And he said, "Well, come on up. I want to show you something." And he showed me this little tiny. It was like maybe 5 foot, 7 feet wide by 12 feet long, and it was down on, like, the ground floor is on a hillside. It was next to the laundry room, and there was a little shower and toilet there, and they had a flood, and there was like 3 feet of mud on the ground in it. And he goes, "If you want to clean this up, you can stay here."
Yeah,
I was on it,
Yeah.
So
So where was that?
It was right at Sunset Plaza Drive, just above Sunset, between Crescent Heights and La Cienega, about halfway. Yeah, right. Nice. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he was a literary agent, and he had all the books on the entertainment business, and I just started with the A's, and Yeah, but anyhow, so that sets up this whole thing. So I was living there, and Hal always, he again, he didn't never represent me, but he gave me great advice. He said one of the things he used to say was, always go early and never know who you're going to run into, and so I got this call from Jeannie Meyer, who was a casting director, and she was assisting Lynn Stallmaster, who was the biggest casting director in the business at that time, other than Hoyt Bowers. And Jeannie said, "Come in. I want you to get some sides. You're going to audition this afternoon." And okay, great. So I went to the office, Lynn Stallmaster's office down in Pico, and I go in, and Jeannie Meyer says, "Yeah, Steve, this character is Otto, and he confronts Anthony Hopkins. A couple of scenes with Anthony Hopkins, and in your audition with Richard Lang, whose dad was a huge director in the 30s. Richard Lang at 20th." At MGM at 2:00, and it was 10:00 in the morning. So I grabbed the sides, and as I'm coming out, Lynn Stallmaster is getting off the elevator, and I just kind of knew him a little bit from a tennis thing, and I said, "Hi, Lynn," and he goes, "Steve, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to pick up sides to read for Otto."
Yeah.
And he gave me a funny look, and he goes, "Is that right, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Good to see you." And I thought that was weird, so I went down.
But you didn't make anything of it. You just
I know. Well, I noticed it, but I it didn't make any sense to me.
There's nothing to infer.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm just thrilled to have the audition, because I was really early in my career.
Yeah.
So I went down to my car and I said, "Well, I can either go home and smoke a joint and relax," which is my one side of me would like to do. But then I thought of Hal. Always go early. So
yeah,
I went to MGM at about noon, 11. I got down there. I went right straight from the office down to MGM. And boy, it was so much fun. I'm so glad I did, because I was walking around, where Elvis used to ride his bicycle and where The Wizard of Oz was filmed. And I had lunch in the commissary. And then finally it was time for the audition. So I went over to this mobile home that they had next to the soundstage, and that was Richard Lang's office. And Jeannie Meyer was outside, and she was acting really strange. I mean, it was like, say, "Okay, Steve, just go ahead and go on in." I go, "This is what's going on?" So I went in and I auditioned, and the first thing I did, I'll never forget it. I set off the burglar alarm by accident. And I just laughed I don't know. I bumped against a wall or something.
Was it like one of those doors that
I don't know. There was like a button or something. I don't know, but I laughed my ass off, and Richard Lang didn't know what to make of it. So I read for him.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to, I forgot the most important thing. My answering machine wasn't working. Because I as soon as I got there, because I'd like to think maybe I might get a call on, so I'd check it, and it wouldn't play back messages, and then I checked it again an hour later, it wouldn't play back, and I was getting really pissed off.
So you see who's the guy's name that comes out of the elevator?
Lynn Stallmaster.
You see Lynn, and you tell him, "Oh, I'm headed over to
I'm going to read for Otto to replace Otto."
He looks at you weird. Mm-hmm. You're like, "Maybe I'll go home and catch a nap."
Well,
I'm gonna go there early and see what's up.
Yeah, because of what Hal said, always go early.
And while you're there, you're like, you're expecting messages, or
you're always checking, because I've had a commercial agent, and you always, if you don't, actors are always checking to see if they're in demand.
It's not working.
It's not working. It wouldn't play back my messages.
Okay.
And I tried 2 more times, and I was getting, and I never forget, I was getting kind of pissed. God damn it,
Yeah.
And so I leave the MGM lot, and I have a commercial audition, and I go to that. And as soon as I get to the commercial audition, the commercial casting director comes out and says, "Steve, you got to call your agent." And
I have a question here. Mm-hmm. How does he know that? How does he know that?
How does he know what?
How does he know that you need to call your agent?
They called him.
Oh, okay.
My agent found out where I was, and tell Steve. Tell Steve. He said, "Tell Steve to call us." So I got on the phone at the casting office, commercial casting office, and Steve, you booked. What was the title of it? It'll come to me.
I have it. Let me see here.
Change of Seasons. Shirley MacLaine, Shirley MacLaine and Anthony Hopkins and Bo Derek. Yeah, and Steve, you booked it, and it was 2 big scenes, So I was real happy. So I drove home, and when I got home, there were 4 messages on my answering machine.
Yeah,
and the first one it said 10. Like 10:20. "Yeah, Steve, it's Jeannie. Call me, honey." Yeah. And then in about a half hour later, "Steve, it's Jeannie. Please give me a call." This is like 11:30, and then 12:30. "Steve, please call me." And then the last one
Yeah.
was, Steve, this is Jeannie. Honey, listen, I'm so sorry for the confusion, but Lynn really doesn't feel you're right for Otto, and he's going to make it up to you on something in the future, but just don't go to the audition. And because I didn't get those messages, because I went early, because if I got home, I would have got the call.
Right.
Because of that, I ended up getting to beat up Anthony Hopkins and hang out with Bo Derek. And she was so cute. She's as sweet as she could be, But she was so funny because she wasn't real experienced, and we were shooting with a snow like a ski slope background, because I was supposed to be a ski instructor, and then I ski up to her and Anthony Hopkins, and I start giving him shit about how much younger she is than he is, and and I'm flirting with her, and just a jerk. It was great, really a jerk. Yeah. And so we're on, and like in our socks with all the ski equipment on in front of this backdrop, and so the first take, we Bo's supposed to ski off. So we finish the last line, and Bo goes to ski off, and she goes shh. Shh, with her mouth, And I goes, cut, Bo, honey, you don't have to do that. We're going to put that in post, And the second time she did it again, it was just cute as could be. Anyway.
So how old was she at that time?
Oh man, 26, 27. Yeah, she was a baby. Yeah. She got together with John Derek when she was like 16 or 15 on a trip to Europe. Started living together, and then he married her so he could come back to the United States. But they had a great relationship, from what I understand.
What else did she do? Like I don't.
Oh, she did 10 with Blake Edwards. That was her big debut, and also
was that a movie?
Dee Wallace, 10. Yeah, Dee Wallace. That was her big break too. That got her. Dee Wallace was a classmate of mine at the Charles Conrad studio, and 10. Steven Spielberg was watching TV one night, and it was and watching this. Blake Edwards was watching TV one night and saw this Starsky and Hutch episode where this girl played a hooker, and he thought, he's perfect for the hooker in my movie, because there's a hooker in 10, and that was Dee Wallace. And then Spielberg happened to see that performance and said, God, she's perfect for the mom in E.T. And so that's how Dee went from. Oh, that was Okay. And she's really lovely. She's also a teacher. She's an excellent teacher.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyhow, so that's if I hadn't, there's so many things had to happen for my answering machine had to not work. It gets to the point. I'm not a big. It's hard to say the word religious guy,
but not a big mystic.
No, well, maybe more mystic than religious. I believe that because like Einstein said, the only thing we know for sure is life is a mystery, and who doesn't love a great mystery? After
some of the way these things went down, how can you not believe in some kind of?
Well, it's a feeling, it's a faith. Yeah. The word believe is a little tricky too. I'm a student of etymology, the study of root words, and
I like that.
And belief actually means accepting without proof. And people say, well, what do you believe in? And I said, I don't believe in beliefs. I like experience. How does it feel as you're doing it? And if you focus on that, the feeling becomes more powerful and more clear. It seems like.
Yeah. When you were talking about how you got Falcone in Con Air, it reminded me of this other story in the book where the guy says, "Hey, run down to my 280Z. There's a shaving."
John Patterson.
What was that?
Oh man, John Patterson. We need to take another break. Thanks for the coffee, but this is all your fault. Well, So the thing about this this training that I got, it's really training to be as human as you can be, and human beings are primarily much more what they feel than what they think. Thinking is very ephemeral, and you think about one thing at a time, but you can feel a lot of things at once. Sure. And that's called mixed emotion, and it's really powerful. But the more that you think, the more that you dissipate your power to feel, because you get distracted. And that's why God invented the sigh. You even forget to breathe because you get lost in thought, So, but Charles bypasses that thought process because according to him, and people like Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, the more that you quiet your thought process, the more powerful your instincts and your intuition become. So the more you feel. So writers will often tell actors what they're supposed to feel in the script. I got to do a wonderful episode of a show called Scarecrow Mrs. King, which is Bruce Boxleitner and one of Charlie's Angels. It's not Farrah and it's not Jacqueline.
See, the Charlie's Angels I remember were the Lucy Liu.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, thanks for making me feel really old. I know, man. I know. That's when it's funny because when I was working with Vin Diesel and DiCaprio, and they treated me like an original gangster, man. You were on Chips, dude. What was that like? What was it like on Little House on the Prairie? I mean, they're very sweet about it.
And you said that on Chips because you went out for. Not the what were the two actors in that show?
It was Eric Estrada and the other character name was John. I can't remember the blonde haired guy. But
okay.
Yeah, they were the two leads. But then there
was that the one that you went out for?
No. There was a older, slightly older sergeant who was in charge of the assigning them every day to what they were supposed to do and all that. But it was the third lead. His name was Sergeant Contreras. Okay. And Robert Pine and I came down to the finals on that, and Robert got it, and it was good.
Sergeant, that would have been the middle of the career because you said towards the end you were the police chief.
Oh well, no, that was towards the beginning. Yeah, I mean that was pretty much the beginning. Like I said, you can define my career by my rank in the police department. I've gone from uniformed cop, now I'm going out for retired chiefs of police. Yeah, but I'm kind of in an interesting type because as I understand it, that I can either be a good guy gone bad or a bad guy trying to go good, and so I enjoy playing them all, but the bad guys are fun too. Yeah. So I went in.
Sorry to interrupt. I just
no worries, man. I like free associating. If you got the money, I got the time. I mean, if you don't have the money, I got the time. Because I kind of relive this, and you're a great interviewer, man. You really are, and you really worked really hard on this.
I'm trying. I really.
No, you're not trying. Say thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to get through this, and I was trying to find a copy locally, and I was like, God damn it, I'm gonna have to order this off Amazon. I would have overnighted it. There was no overnight option, so but I really wanted to get through it just because. Like I said, you're always a really good storyteller in class, and I knew there was going to be some gold in here.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, and shameless self-promotion. Yeah, whoever is listening to the sound of my voice right now, you can order it on Amazon.
Definitely.
The title is "Born in a Fatal Car Crash." If you just type in Steve Eastin, Eastin, and "Born in a Fatal Car Crash," you can get it for $20 and send it to me, and I'll sign it for another 10. And then if you want to a hug, those are 17. Let me get my catalog out here. How am I prostituting myself today? Oh yes.
Hey, the $10 signature is worth it for sure.
Well, I used to practice when I was in junior high. I'd practice that. Yeah, I wanted to do this for a really long time. So I get cast in this Scarecrow and Mrs. King episode. It's directed by a guy named John Patterson, and I play a CIA operative who was so evil that he got kicked out of the CIA. So that took some doing, and one of the guys that got him kicked out was Bruce Boxleitner, who was his code name was Scarecrow in the CIA. So in the scene there's a kind of a little TV show happening within the episode where I'm sitting there and being interviewed with Bruce Boxleitner. And Bruce Boxleitner is telling the guy that's running the interview why I was kicked out and how it was the right thing to do. And so afterwards, the scene continues, and Bruce and I are backstage, and I really go after him. Scarecrow, how could you do this to me? I love the CIA. You had no right. And underneath the line, the writer had put angry. So I started in on him and just using energy, didn't know what the hell was going to happen. And all of a sudden, tears were coming down my cheeks, which is mixed emotion, and that's one of the things that was so precious about Charles's teaching, He was able to convey how to experience that because you're really experiencing it all the time. You're just distracted, So anyhow, he said cut, and this is a good cut. He said cut, and he comes over and he looked at me for really quite a, like 10 or 15 seconds, and then he says, huh, I didn't even know that was in there, And so it was a good comment. And so we finished the show, and then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a call. Yeah, Steve, they want to see you for Hill Street Blues, and that's every actor in town wanted to hear that because Hill Street had been the #1 show. It was the #1 show for 12 years. Stephen Bochco's first big hit. Amazing show. Revolutionized television. They had a dirty soundtrack where people would talk at the same time, and before that, you were never allowed to do that. But it made it sound real. And so it was really revolutionary. And everybody wanted to be on it. So I thought, oh boy, Hill Street. And my agent said, it's just one line as a homeless guy. And I go, I don't care. Shit, bring it on. There's a great actor named Dirk Bogarde who said an actor should take every job you can get until you get 2 offered at the same time. Then take the one that pays more. Yeah. So I said, sure, I'll go in. So I went in and I let my beard grow that one day, because he's homeless, right? That's my method work. And and I went in and they said, Steve, we're ready for you. So I went into the office and there was John Patterson from Scarecrow and Bochco and the guy from the X-Files. That producer was one of the producers on Hill Street like 20 years earlier.
So
Tom Goodwin, Bob Goodwin was also in the room.
Okay.
And he was producing. So when he was young and I was young, so I did the one line.
I'm just trying to the timeline. So this is after the X-Files?
No, this is 20 years before the X-Files. This is my first. This is how I got my first guest star part.
Okay.
Because so Bob Goodwin was there and Stephen Bochco and John Patterson, the director.
I'm bouncing around the book. So
no worries, man. Hey, listen, I'm surprised I can even recall any sequence at this point. But so I did the one line. I was really happy to be there. That's fine. I get it. No worries. I walk out, and I didn't even get past the secretary's desk when the door opens. And here comes Patterson out, and he goes, "Steve, come here, quick, come here." I go, "What, John?" He goes, "Look, man, I didn't want you for the homeless guy. I mean, but there's another part of this SWAT team wannabe who likes hanging out with the SWAT guys, and it's really, and I think you're perfect for it. But they wouldn't see you because of your lack of credits. But now that they've met you, they're going to let you read for it.
Yeah.
So I want you to, here's the keys to my car. Unbelievable. So here's the keys to my car. It's down. He told me where it was. He says, it's a 280Z. There's a shaver in the glove compartment. I want you to go down. I want you to shave and then come back up. And again, the Charles Conrad training was perfect because, we don't care. We don't have any time. That doesn't matter. Your creative intelligence is autonomous. So I went in and I read for Bochco, and it was a part of this wannabe SWAT guy, and I booked it. I ended up that was my first guest star part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about how like the day player, you started as a day player.
Most actors do.
Right.
Yeah,
everyone. I mean, started.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Even John Wayne. So his early roles were walk-ons.
Yeah. So as a day player, like how much were you making per day?
At that time, it was between 3 and 5 a day, or something like that.
$500.
$300 to $500, yeah.
Okay.
And if you were if you're a co-star, it went to $2,000. And if it was a guest star, top of show guest star, it was $5,000. And then you would make $5,000 again for the first rerun.
Right.
Then it would drop down. But if the first rerun was you back in those were $1988, $87. That was $10,000, for one show, and so that was. And plus, the thing that happened was, if you book a top of show guest star, then your agent can demand that for any other show that you go on, and they only start submitting you for. So once you work your way up.
Yeah. So once you got there, you're kind of like, this is my rate now.
Yeah, this is my rate now. Yeah, and that's all changed now. I mean, it's become so corporate that nobody's making any money. I mean, they're screwing talent so bad now.
I was like, these dollar amounts are pretty good, and this is back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even think they're making close to this.
No, it's horrible. Yeah, it's really
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was reading about that game show you went on, where it was like the first time you won like $6,000. And then they brought you back for a few more days, and you walk out of there with
$25,000. Yeah, that was my daughter, my game show baby. That night that I got that check, I think she conceived.
Yeah, but man, those are some of my favorite stories in here where you're just like, you go in to do this part, and what does he mean when he says like, "Hey, I didn't want you for that homeless guy"? Like, does that mean like he brought you in.
So yeah, he insisted he had enough juice because he went on to be one of the main directors of The Sopranos. John was amazing.
Yeah.
But he had enough juice to say, well, if you're not going to see him for this part, I still want to work with this kid, so bring him in for the homeless guy, And then I think in his mind he goes, once they meet him, they'll see his potential to be the wannabe, Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, that's what I mean when when I would see you work in class with one of the students, or even when I would watch you in a movie or something, it was like, man, this guy has something that the rest of us just don't have. I mean, it seemed like that when I would watch you in movies. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not an actor. I'm not in the industry whatsoever. But just from the outside looking in, I was telling my girlfriend, she's an actor, that I was like, this guy just had like some magic. I don't know how he did what he did. And I know you always give credit to Charles Conrad and the Choiceless Awareness, but man, it was something to behold. I'll tell you what.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been put in positions that I had the opportunity to follow my bliss, to make my dreams come true. Even when I was a kid, I would think about, boy, I'd love to have a line in a movie that if I said the line, people would know what movie it was. Ironically, the most famous one is "You Dirty Rat," but that was supposed to be Jimmy Cagney, but he never said that. But that's the kind of thing. Or we're going to need a bigger boat from Jaws. One of those. Yeah. And then when I did Field of Dreams,
there aren't many of those.
But he winked at me.
Yeah.
People, oh yeah, man, you kid at the picture, he winked at you. I remember. So I don't know how it sounds. I don't give a fuck, but it gives me warm fuzzies. It's ironic too, because you learn that that it doesn't take you off the the wheel of suffering. Even if your dreams come true, but people say. At this point, they ask me how I am, and I say I'm best ever. If you haven't learned that by the time you're 76 years old, you should just put a bullet behind your ear. Fuck that. This is just you. What you lose in physical capabilities, and maybe mental acuity, be able to see, hear, and fuck or whatever. You kind of make up for it with a greater. You can make up for it with a greater level of appreciation. Like this beautiful little place you have, up here on this hillside on this gorgeous spring day in Southern California, man, making a new friend.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, and we don't have to go there if you don't want to, but I didn't even know you were married, Steve. I mean, I never heard you talk about Jane Marie or anything like that. I mean, what I guess I just wanted to know, like, what happened with Jane Marie?
We got married in a fever. I was this is after I had been shot and I was still recuperating. I had pins in my elbow. So I was teaching at a school in Phoenix, and I met her there, and she was stunningly beautiful and a real character. She was 19 and I was 34. So there's 15-year age difference. And but we were engaged after 4 days and got married 3 months later. It was just it was lovely. But we were very different people, and we just weren't compatible. And we really made to try and make it work. I think it was 12 or 13 years. And it was tough.
Yeah.
Because it was not easy. The reason I don't talk about it a lot is because it's just I'm at peace with it. She's doing well for herself, and I met I had really, really rather strict financial responsibilities because she didn't work, but so the state of California looks at it like she gave up her life to support my career, and I guess in a way she did, and so consequently, but I these two daughters that came from the union have made me a much better person because I had to become the person that they thought I was, and they held me in such high esteem that, and I just love them.
Yeah.
So I'm content with that too. I mean, I do wonder sometimes, why it is that I was never to find a soulmate, to spend very much time with, because I never really felt that connection. And but then now it's kind of interesting, because at the age of 76, all my buddies that met their great love when they were 21, they're just looking at each other, seeing who's going to be the first one to die, and I don't have to deal with that. I'd lose a dog every now and then, but, I almost feel delivered,
Really?
from that. Yeah, in a way, because,
It'd be tough.
well, they've proven that, if you have a mate for that period of time and she passes or he passes, that the mate often follows within a year.
Yeah.
It's just too hard.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is just, I don't know, when you get older, it's like you pass on what you've learned, to the younger guys. And I certainly don't have it all figured out in terms of finding, a partner, what to look for, and that's why I was asking just like what happened, because I know you guys were married for 12, 13 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the life of an actor didn't help, man. I mean, it's just...
The feast and famine.
Yeah, feast and famine, and plus I was coming off of that. It was a calamitous mugging when I got shot. I mean, that put me out of commission for about 14, 15 months, and you don't when it was like starting over when I came back to Los Angeles, and I only had the money that I got from the Victims of Violent Crime Commission in California for us. It was like $7,000, so that lasted about 2 seconds in L.A. So. But I think we made a good try at it, and and like I said, she's doing fine for herself now.
Good. Yeah, I remember I was reading in here when I think you guys had moved
to Taos,
and then you came back, and you were a building manager. Was that?
Yeah.
Was that before her, or were you? Was that,
No. That was one of the reasons I was so happy. What happened was, after I went on the game show and won the $25,000, she became pregnant with my first daughter, Shane, and we were running out of money because the apartment was expensive. So I just found in the Juanez, I found an apartment manager's job over in West Hollywood, and it was a 1-bedroom with a den, and the den made a perfect nursery, so it's just like right on time. And I managed that building for about 2 years. Yeah. It was quite an adventure.
I was a building manager. I don't know if you remember. I was a building manager when I met you, and I was in East Hollywood. I think you said you were at Sunset and Crescent.
Fountain. No. I did live. I lived in the apartment building there that I used to call the Cockroach Arms, because I'd get awakened by cockroaches on my arms.
Oh,
but no, the apartment building I managed was at Fountain and Kings Road.
Yeah.
Right on the hillside there.
The company I worked for, they had a couple right there off Franklin. Mm-hmm. But I was in East Hollywood. But man, managing an apartment building, how many tenants did you have? Do you remember?
How many? Probably 40, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I had 16.
Yeah.
But I remember you in the book. You mentioned since you weren't paying rent, like you started looking for a house, and it was just another one of those things. Like, man, the money back then, like even people today who are like managing an apartment building, they're not looking for a house.
No, nobody can afford a house now. It's horrible. Yeah, the country's in the grips of the oligarchs. Capitalism is a two-faced bitch. I don't know enough about economics to speak absolutely about it, but I do know there's something wrong when 10 people have more money than 80% of the population.
There's definitely the rich are definitely getting rich. by a lot.
And it's now they're coming. I mean, well, we'll just see. I'm one of the things. I was very political. As I talk about in the book, I ran for governor of Arizona, and I was a McGovern delegate to the state Democratic Convention in '68 and all of that. But it's kind of nice. I've had to let it go, because it's like in martial arts. You have to go with the. If you try to resist the punch, it'll knock you out. If you just go with it, you can come back and do some damage. Yeah. Because I don't recognize my country anymore, and it's a big reflection of it is that the corporations are buying up all the housing and turning it into, and turning them into rentals.
That's a huge one.
And they're all making cash offers. So people that are coming in the old traditional way of having a mortgage, it's like, I'm sorry, it's sold before we put it out.
I know.
Yeah.
I kind of have some mixed thoughts about that because I guess in general, I mean, I'm for like free markets and let businesses like do what they want. But then at the same time, it's like, well, hold on, like there might be like a whole generation that like never owns a home.
Disenfranchised. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And rightfully pissed. Pissed. I've got a nephew who's one of the most beautiful minds I've ever seen. And he's bilingual, powerful, poet. Yeah. And he just, he's divorced himself from the whole process because and I understand his altruism. Yeah. So, but everything's its own reward. I mean, I just loving all these people that are coming out saying now, I didn't know they were going to, raise my prices. I thought he was going to do this. No, you don't understand.
The tariffs?
The cockroach will sting you. There's a great story, a fable about a frog and a cockroach, not a frog, a frog and a scorpion. And they're on one side of a river, and the scorpion asked the frog to give him a ride to the other side of the river. And the frog said, "No, I'm not going to do that. You're going to sting me." "No, I won't. I promise. And because if I sting you, I'll drown too. And so they get out in the middle of the river, and sure enough, the scorpion stings the frog. The frog said, "I thought you said you weren't going to sting me." And they said, "I have to. I'm a scorpion." And they both drown. I mean, the rich are cutting off the brands they're sitting on. There's a great saying in Spanish, tierra o muerte. Once people no longer have a place to live, they get mad, and so it's land or death. Yeah. And it's been going on forever. So. Yeah,
it's.
And I don't work for myself because I grew up in a blissfully, different era, And but I'm concerned. I'm not even concerned about anything at this point, man. I'll tell you. There's a big school of thought that can say that human beings are the virus and global warming is the antivirus. The Earth is going to go on. It's not going to look like it looks now, but at least it'll get rid of the fleas. Yeah, the way we've been treating it.
If that happened, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I hope it doesn't.
Well, yeah, lifetime, but. You just don't know, man. Yeah. But it sure is.
We definitely haven't taken as good a care of the planet as one should.
No, and it's all because of the profit motive. They just. But again, it's you can develop selective concentration, and I have managed at this point, and I say this advisedly because usually when I say something like this, it comes back to bite me in the ass, but I've managed to deal with worry, because worry that will cause you to not live as long as you should. And worry comes from the ancient Greek. It means to strangle, so if you want to choke on life, then just worry about it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned I think one of the words you touch on is ruminate.
Yeah, chewing your own cud. Yeah.
It's so true. It's like it's the fastest way to just hate every minute of life is to just ruminate on.
And you don't notice life because life. Again, I'm struck at how crystal this day is. When I got up in this mountain where you live, I'm just
it's a quiet little.
Yeah, and just had a little chat with a couple of the neighbors, and I just
Did you?
just.
It's just these are working people. This is all residential.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
But the just brilliant sunlight and beautiful spring day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been happy since I came here. The when I moved to LA, the thing I hated the most was every apartment I lived in. There was always so much noise. Everyone was so loud. Everyone was like they were all trying to make it. They were yelling at their producers middle of the night, whoever.
Or dealing blow out of their house. Or,
whatever.
It's nasty.
That was the one thing I wanted. I just wanted a quiet place. Yeah. And so when I found this place, it was like. I'm in like this, and this is probably the quietest place I've ever lived.
Yeah, that's why I live. I'm fortunate. I have a little house in Burbank, and Burbank is it's a little bit of a time capsule. It's the house is originally built for the plane workers at Lockheed during World War II. So they're not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, the lots are nice size, but the houses are really humble and little. But now all the below the line people, because Disney's there and all of the, a lot of the people that are creative, so they take these little houses and turn them into really nice. Some of them they're just big, they mansionize them, which is kind of ugly. But it's like living in a Norman Rockwell painting. I would rather stick needles in my eyes than live on the west side of L.A. with all the traffic and the restrictions and plus the hedges 12 feet tall and nobody knows anybody. And I mean, again, it's
nice properties, but
nice property. I mean, and most of those houses are people's fourth home. They got,
not very inviting.
No, it's not, and not a sense of neighborhood at all.
Yeah. Every time occasionally I'll have to go up there in the hills for something. I'm buying a piece of furniture and. It's like, man, it's nice up here, but it does kind of feel like stay away. Yeah. But one other thing I wanted to get back to your book, and if you have to take off, Steve.
No, man. Listen, you get an actors love to talk about themselves, man. So and you're such a good. I want to say you're such a good interviewer that this is the first time I've really. I mean, I've done a few little interview things, but it's the first time we really sat down and spoken with someone who read it, who gets it and is interested in it, and so it's I'm at the beginning of that process, man.
I almost said I try.
Very trying.
This chapter 50, by the way, I love how these chapters are just a page or two, and there's 200 chapters in this book. Good, that was good. I like that. This was about the Field of Dreams scene, and it was the Ian Crawford. And he came up to you.
Yeah, the editor. Yeah.
And he said there was an angle on you when you were saying goodbye to Bert. There was so much emotion in your face. We couldn't use it because of continuity issues, but I want you to know I saw it. And I think that must have felt pretty good.
Well, it's such a bookend, I mean, like when I worked on Killers of the Flower Moon, I mean, if it's the last thing I do in Hollywood, and I'm again at 77, which I'll be in 2 months, you don't ever know. Yeah. But if the last scene I did was me and 4 Academy Award winners, so. But the thing with Burt was when I told my dad when I was 8 years old, Burt Lancaster was one of the guys that made me want to be an actor because I saw him in The Rose Tattoo, I saw him in Emma Gantry, I saw him in. Trapeze, he was a former circus performer, but he was just magnificent. Come Back, Little Sheba, and so
I know he's a legend. He's just
unbelievable.
He's before my time.
Yeah, sure. So when I he was one of the guys that made me want to be an actor, and then I go to the first the first read through for Field of Dreams, and it's at Hollywood Methodist Church right there at Highland and Franklin. Highland and where it is. And a table about this narrow, and I'm talking to somebody here, and somebody sits down, and I sit in my field of vision, and I turn, and my nose is maybe 18 inches to 2 feet away from Burt Lancaster's nose. All of a sudden, I'm seeing this guy who had, so I, and he was just so lovely. That he would call everybody by their character name, and he was just very, very gregarious and stuff. But he was really sick at that time. He had a heart problem, and he was supposed to be in the Old Gringo with Jane Fonda.
How old was he at that time?
Oh, God, in his late 70s.
Okay.
And so evidently Kevin Costner took a cut in salary to get the insurance to get him on Field of Dreams. And
because you mentioned another project that he was gonna do, but
it was called the Old Gringo. It was, and they replaced him with Gregory Peck because they didn't want to pay the insurance on his heart.
For
that exact reason. Then he came to Field of Dreams.
Yeah,
and so ironically, again, because he was such an influence on me, and it just turns out that I was in the last movie scene he ever did in his life. And what's happened is he saves the little girl. I mean, it's so funny because this movie is just so powerful. It's generational.
Yeah. This is one I've seen.
Yeah, he saves a little girl, but then he can't change back into his younger self. So he's walking out on the corn carrying the bag, the doctor's bag, and he's walking through the ball players. And right before he goes into the corn, he stops at me and he looks at me, and I shake his hand, and I say, "Way to go, Doc." And yeah, I can't remember what his response was, but that was his name. And Come Back Little Sheba was Doc, which is an amazing connection. And he walked into the corn and disappeared. And as I was watching him walk in the corn, I had this revelation. It was almost an oh shit moment. I'm going to be seeing that again very, very soon. And about a year later, I was in my living room and I was watching the NBC Evening News or whatever, and lead story, Burt Lancaster, one of America's most beloved actors, died today at such and such an age. And they showed him all through and then the very last scene they showed was him going into the corn.
Yeah.
And waving goodbye. Yeah. So that's the emotion, because all that was going on.
Yeah. And you mentioned some other really, I don't know if bizarre is the right word, but just the Becky Dubuisson story.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
It's incredible.
Yeah. Rick Riley. Yeah.
What's that
Becky
about?
Dubuisson. She
Okay.
The Fenway Park plays a big part in Field of Dreams. It's where Kevin Costner goes to Boston to find Terrence Mann, who was supposed to be the famous artist who's very, I can't remember his name right now, but he's the one who was notoriously standoffish. So he changed it to Terrence Mann and hired my beloved James Earl, amazing, wonderful man. And so anyhow, so he goes there. And they go to Fenway Park, and that's where Kevin sees Go the Distance, or if you feel it, whatever. And Terrence Mann pretends he didn't see it, and then and all of that. So this whole thing happens.
Yeah.
And so Becky Dubuisson said that she was like 37. Her husband was, I think, 2 years older, and she said my Field of Dreams was my husband's favorite movie. And he died suddenly, very young, and she was heartbroken, and she kept having this dream where she was at the Field of Dreams, drinking champagne on New Year's Eve, and she had it 2 nights in a row. And so she called her girlfriend, or one of her, I think a cousin or something, and said, will you go to Iowa with me? I think, because she was heartbroken, so will you go to Iowa with me? Because I think it'll make me feel better if I do this. And so they drove in the dead of winter. Iowa's nasty in the wintertime. They drove up to the farmer's farmhouse, and he came out, and they got to talking, and he said, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. You're going to freeze your ass off. So on New Year's Eve, they set up a little table in center field at the Field of Dreams in the snow. And she said they didn't have champagne. They had a Coke and a hot dog or something, a beer and a hot dog or something in honor of her husband.
Yeah.
And the next morning, she was feeling better about it. And so she went back to thank the farmer for letting them do that, because it just made her feel better. And they got to talking, and they ended up getting married, and they're still married today. They've been married like 20 years. And
that guy had never been married?
No, he was a lifelong bachelor, 51 years old at the time that he did, and he was shrewd. Boy, he was a shrewd Iowa farmer. He got them to completely remodel his house, and then he got them to sign a contract. If they didn't put it back the way it was, they were going to owe him like $100,000.
What?
Because he knew that they would rather forfeit the $100,000 than do all the trouble of putting the house back the way it was. So he ended up getting his house completely redone and $100,000.
This is the guy who owned the ranch where
he owned the farm. His
farm.
Parents. It was his parents' place, and he grew up there. He was actually born on that farm.
Really?
Yeah, that's part of the magic.
Is the baseball diamond still there?
Oh, not only that, they built a major league stadium there. It only seats about 17,000. Oh. But this was one of the funniest and nicest moments of my career. Really, I was in Oklahoma. I was doing Killers of the Flower Moon with Scorsese, and boy, I said that loud. Scorsese, and
well, you should.
Yeah, and
say it louder.
Yeah, so I get a call, and it's the guy has this Mad Dog Sports, Russo. The guy Mad Dog Sports on the satellites TV, the big Sirius radio, right? Okay. It's kind of a big thing. Right. And he said, we'd like to interview you about the game that's being played at the Field of Dreams between the Red Sox and the Yankees, because they actually had a game there. And so he was talking.
Not like a exhibition.
Game. A real game. It was in season. Okay. It was a game that counted in the standings. It was, if you build it, they will come. That it was the fulfillment of that. And it's right there on that farm, and so we were talking about the filming, and I told him stories about the filming, and he said, "So Steve, are you gonna go back for this game? Are they gonna have you there for the game?" And I said, "Well, think they would have, but I can't because I'm doing a movie with Martin Scorsese right now. And even as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, that's all right for a small town kid from Eastern Colorado. I can't be at the Field of Dreams because I'm doing Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
From one end, because it really, Field of Dreams was the first big movie that I got into.
Okay.
It was and then of course, the last one I did at this point is Killers of the Flower Moon, which I'm intensely proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just funny, but just being even able to say that, I thought, that's all right.
Yeah. How we were talking about, like, your agent didn't even want to put you up for that, and then after you booked it, did you stay on with her, or like? I feel like these days, and I don't know if it's the right call or the wrong call, but I feel like these days, if that happened to an actor today, they'd kind of be like, "See, like, I'm done with you."
Well, look.
But it was different back then. It was like,
not really. The first thing an actor does when he gets his agent is look for a better agent. I mean, it just kind of, it's an unwritten rule. I mean, they'll drop you in a New York minute, and you got to remember that they work for you. You hire them as much as they have the power, because it's really impossible to work in Hollywood without a good agent. Because everything's packaged now and everything's corporate. I mean, it was always like that.
So did you stay with her, or did you?
I don't recall. I think I stayed with her I stayed with her until the filming was done. But eventually, no. I think might have been from there.
I remember eventually you talk about getting
J. Carter Gibson. I got the agent on the correct side of the hill, the one that got pancreatic cancer.
That's another thing story.
Unbelievable, man.
So what happened? He just shut the whole agency down. No one.
Yeah. They what I mean by the correct side of the hill is you want an agent that's not in the valley. Because I mean, there's some good agencies in the valley. Harry Gold's in the valley. He's in Burbank, but most of the big agencies are over in Century City and Beverly Hills and on Sunset Plaza Drive and all that. Yeah. So you want an agent there, and so I got one, and it was a J. Carter Gibson agency, and it was a nice medium-sized agency, and within 5 or 6 weeks, I was reoccurring, meaning I was appearing in several episodes of 2 really big series. One was Life Goes On, which was the first series to have a kid with Down syndrome on it, and the other was Equal Justice, which was Sarah Jessica Parker's first big series.
Okay.
And so I was reoccurring on 2 different major series, and so I got a letter from Jim, and I thought it was going to be "Attaboy, we're killing it, we're looking forward to it."
Yeah.
And the first line was, "Steve, I regret to inform you I've contracted pancreatic cancer, and I have 3 months to live, so I'm closing my agency."
And sure enough, like 3 months later.
3 months later, and so, but the beautiful thing was, man, I went to his, because he was a character. He was funny, man. I went to his memorial service.
How old was he?
Young, in his early 40s, and I went to his memorial service in Westwood, at the same little cemetery where Marilyn is buried, Marilyn Monroe, and they had a chapel there, and they had a program, and they gave me the program going in, and on the front of the program was a picture of Jim. And then underneath the picture was his favorite quote, and it's perfect for Hollywood. It's his response to actors who would complain that I didn't get the part. It's not fair. I should have got. He said his quote was, "If you want fair, go to Pomona."
Right.
Because that's where the LA County Fair, the LA County Fair is.
Okay.
Yeah. But then that's when I had started playing softball for the Harry Gold team, and they took 2 clients from Jim's roster. One was a guy named Ed Nelson, who did a lot. He did the Twilight Zone and me, and that's how I ended up with Harry for about 10 or 12 years. And I did a lot of booking with Harry.
Yeah, and then so after that, because in the book you mentioned there was someone who you wanted to represent you, and you said, "Hey, if I pitch for you."
Yeah, that's Harry.
Harry. Okay.
Yeah. I was on Days of Our Lives, and he had a client that was a regular named Patsy P. He came to visit her, and I'd seen them playing in this Saturday league, and Billy Crystal was on his team, and they just would fight. They were so funny, like New Yorkers do. They would just fight with each other. They didn't have much success, so when I saw Harry, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, Harry, I'm looking for an agent. How about if you pitch for me, meaning if you submit me for jobs, I'll pitch for you, meaning on Saturday I'll throw the ball for you."
Yeah.
And he said, "No, our roster is set," and so I didn't think too much of it. And about a year later, I ran into Harry at Carl's Jr. I'll never forget it. And he and he came up to me and said he's still interested in pitching for my team. And then I hadn't, I didn't mention anything about representation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. I feel like a lot of people, they would have like insisted like, hey, well, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
You kind of knew like.
I guess, yeah. So looking back, I guess so, man. I mean, I do have a big mouth. I have to, I'm aware of that, but especially if I start to think I know what I'm talking about, that's when I'm dangerous. But he said, you said, you can pitch for us. I was already pitching for him when Jim perished, and so then he brought me over to Gold Marshak.
And you said you were on Days of Our Lives at that point?
Let's see. I think that was when it was. Yeah, because it was after Field of Dreams. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that's. Yeah,
because you had said adios. You and your wife were driving back to Taos.
I thought maybe the change of scenery would be good for my marriage.
And you're not gone but 1 hour from LA.
I'm in San Bernardino. I mean, it wasn't even. It's 50 miles. And I get a page. Call your agent. And you've just booked. 50 episodes of Days of Our Lives, because I'd done 4 different characters up to that point on the show, so they know me pretty well. But then it's so funny because there's always that joke: if you want to get a job in Hollywood, just buy a non-refundable plane ticket or move. Yeah, and then it'll bring it. And that's exactly what happened. So
So then you guys moved to Taos though.
Mm-hmm. We lived in Taos for just a little over a year.
And you're taking red eyes.
Yeah, I'm flying in and out. My contract was a show and a half a week, so I could come in and work for 2 days. And
what's a show and a half? Like?
Well, they average it out. Like if you over the course, that's how they pay. Sometimes they pay 3 shows a week, which is, I think at that time it was $2,000 a show or something. So, which again at that time that was pretty good money. Yeah,
even today.
Yeah. Like, it is. Yeah. But that was that's when I realized I really didn't want to do soaps.
Because how many episodes have you done when you murmur, who writes this shit?
Oh fuck!
How far in?
I was probably 37 shows in, and my character was getting some traction. I mean, people were starting to hate on me in supermarkets and stuff. That's what happens to soap stars. Their fans are a little wacky. Like I remember with my daughter, and some woman walked by and she goes, "You're an asshole," and my little daughter goes, "Daddy, why did she say that?" I said, "Shane, I'm this character, because she was talking about the character on Days of Our Lives."
Was she jabbing you, or was she?
No. She meant it. She meant it. Yeah,
Your daughter's right there.
Yeah, sitting there. Yeah, right there. Yeah, it was so funny.
Jesus.
Never forget it. Yeah, they were serious about Days. Those fans.
Yeah. Is that show still running?
It's on some kind of one of the streaming things now. They finally shut it down.
Okay.
Yeah. It was good. There were no bad experiences,
Yeah.
But it was not ideal. The writing is. I didn't. It's just like I say in the book. Soap opera writing treads water a lot because you have to have 4 scenes from each. I was a storyline, so there were 4 scenes in the episodes I was in, and it was basically saying the same thing 4 times, just slightly differently. Yeah. And I mean, it just. If I had my druthers, and I did, and and a lot of people looking back. As a matter of fact, Ken Corday was a very nice man. He actually came up to me at one point at a gathering and said, "Steve, it's good to see you." It was kind of those let bygones be bygones, and we need to get you back on the show. And I said, "Ken, thanks, but I'm good."
Oh, the guy that
the producer, not the writer that I said who writes this shit. Did I talk about that? I don't think I told you.
You mentioned that he knocks on the door.
Well, what happened was I had cornered the market on evil. My character was Colonel Alfred Jericho. Really soap opera fun,
Yeah.
So I'm in this cave, and there's all these computer things around, and I look at this speech that I've got, and it's a paragraph, but it's one sentence, which is that's not necessarily good. You want to have like short sentences a little bit, Anyway, so it was just hard for me to get through. I finally got through it, and then under my breath I said, "Jesus Christ, who writes this shit?"
Yeah.
And I went down to my dressing room, and about 10 minutes later, there's a knock at the door, and I open it. It's this guy standing there. I feel terrible about this, but he said, Steve, I want you to know I'm the guy who writes this shit. Yeah. And I said, look, man, I'm sorry. I'm having a bad day. But then 3 weeks later, my character went off a cliff, and his body was never found. I just love the way they got rid of me.
I thought you were just being funny. Was that in the show, the body's never found?
No. I mean, that was part of the storyline. Yeah, okay. I mean, I didn't follow it that closely, because I was really kind of done with it.
I thought you were just
but the people on it were nice. Marlene was a bit of a soap opera diva. She was so funny, man. She's just really full of herself. But the guy that was the big star, he was a real sweetheart.
Is she the one that said, "Hey, if you touch my hair"?
Yeah.
What did she say?
Well, I had, I did the day player as Cal from Tucson, where I beat up Patsy Pease, and then I did some other role, and then some kind of construction guy. I was on it for 3 weeks, and then I got the part of this kidnapper who kidnaps Marlena. Okay. What's her name? I can't remember her name right now. But so the first day of playing that character, I'm standing on the set, and she walks up to me, and I'm supposed to have my arm around her neck with a telephone up to her ear, making her have this conversation. And she didn't even say hello, didn't introduce herself. Yeah. She walks up and goes, "I want you to know, if you pull my hair, I'm going to slap your face." And I went, well, I wanted to say, "Hey, I'm the kidnapper. I'll slap your face." But you don't want to cross a soap opera diva. She was a big star, Yeah. But it was pretty funny. Yeah. Pretty funny. She might have been having a bad day. I always say that because you never know these people,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I'm not even halfway through. I still have notes. I read the first half, and then the second half, I use this app called Speechify, where you can take pictures of the pages and someone will read it. Don't ever use the app. It's horrible. It was mispronouncing the most simple words.
Oh, wow.
It was almost unlistenable to. But I mean, Steve, I wanted to bring you on here just because I mean you've had a really interesting life, and I just I don't know. I guess I would just ask you, like, what if you had to, like, talk to a younger guy like me, who's still trying to figure stuff out. Like I said, the last few years have been a lot of just crossing stuff off lists, trying different things, and just like, wow, this didn't work, that didn't work, what I don't know, what do you think about that?
Sit down on the couch till the feeling passes. No, I'm being facetious. What I've experienced, again,
that's all I'm interested in.
This whole thing, this whole thinking. It is the first step is realizing that the voice in your head is not your friend. Yeah. The voice in your head is a whiny little bitch who will find something for you to have a problem with, and as soon as you solve it, it will find something else for you to have a problem with. And so that's the function of the conscious mind, is to create a problem and try to solve it. And my sense of it is that if you work in diligently to rectify that, meaning meditation every day for your first thing when you wake up in the morning. Meditate.
You meditate every day?
Every day. I met a teacher when I was 20 and he was 12. Changed my life. Yeah. I talk about him in the book, actually. Yeah. But he's a grandfather now. But yeah, meditation is really, really important because it not only gives you a clearer perception, because you're not in the fog of lost in thought and, worry and fear and doubt and self-consciousness and all of that. Yeah. But also it seems to cause a flow of what religious people call grace. Other people call it coincidence. People call it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. Okay. It seems to bring about a greater flow of that. So it's not something you can actively do, but you have to, it's almost, I use this analogy, and I don't know why this seems to work, but it does. If you're in a swimming pool and there's a floating object near you that you want, if you reach out to grab it, the water will push it away from you. So you learn to sit back and just do a scooping motion with your hand to create a current, and then all of a sudden something will transpire, or it won't. I mean,
I literally remember my dad doing that in a pool.
Oh yeah,
trying to
get something to come to him. That's synchron. That's a little synchronistic moment. That seems to be a sign that you're on the right track. You know, I mean, the fact that we had an opportunity to have this conversation is a sign that we're both on the right track. Because this was really delightful. You know, really fruitful, and it
Yeah, you did me a huge favor coming on here. Let's be honest. We both know who did who the favor, and I really appreciate it. I mean that.
I mirror that right back at you, and I deeply appreciate, again, you know, we are fully clothed as we're having this conversation.
Camera's on.
Right. But the fact that you find it compelling, you know, it means the world to me. You know, you're a good kid. I can tell that you're altruistic. You're trying to do the right thing. You know, sometimes, you know,
I'm not trying.
Attaboy, good, well said. You're doing the right thing. That's exactly right. And that, because you have to be careful the messages you send to your unconscious. You know, because people, the first thing that happens, they come in. You know, when I work, I always, and I go, wait.
Yes.
Up to this point, I have always. Yeah. Let's see what happens now.
That seems trivial, but I agree with you.
It's earth shaking, man.
Yeah, it really. I think you really, however you want to frame it, like, I do think it'll help once you acknowledge the power of words. You know, what the ones you think and the ones you say, and you don't have to get all, you know, woo-wooey, so to speak, but. Nonetheless, I do think it matters the way you think and the words you say, even if you're. I'm not talking about reciting like what is it when you look in the mirror, affirmations.
I know. That's in the same vicinity. Yeah. That is in the same. But to see that's kind of positive thinking, and what I think the ultimate realization for me is that positive thinking is just negative thinking with a little makeup on. You know, that's all it is, man. Because, you know, eventually when you start thinking that rock is going to hit that pane of glass and those cracks are going to start to go off in all directions, and you're going to end up back worried. You know, things like anyhow. That I speak for myself. That's seems to be my. If I'm not aware, that seems to be my baseline.
Okay.
You know, and I don't want to be on that baseline, and I have the power to not dwell there.
Yeah.
It's very Zen, man. I mean, as much as I understand Zen, I mean, the meditation I do is not. You know, they don't hit you in the head if they think you're thinking. You know, that's what the Zen have, this bamboo thing that while you're meditating, they can kind of tell by your eye movement or something. If you start thinking, they just whack you in the back of the head. Well, that's not Prem Rawat. This is it's much more. It's just the breath, man. Feel yourself in a negative thought pattern. Focus and take a really deep breath and exhale a little extra at the bottom and inhale a little extra at the top. Because when you focus on that, the conscious mind subsides, and it waits for you to forget to breathe again, and then it can get in. You know, that's why the Hindus call the breath the prana, the life force. You know, so
I tried. Sometimes I would fall asleep because I would do it real early in the morning.
That's perfect.
And I was like, well, I don't think this is. If I'm just going back to sleep, this is not.
See, the left brain, the thinking, doesn't want you to do this, man. It'll come up with any fucking reason it can, anything logical it can come up with.
Yeah.
So to keep you from doing this, because it's a threat to its very existence, because it's what makes us separate. In terms of quantum physics, there's no separation between you and I. There's atoms vibrating between us, and our bodies are atoms that are vibrating, and we're just energy transmuting. You know, it's called aging. You know, and where we came from, where
we're going. A little bit about that.
Well, there you go, man. Yeah. About aging or about quantum physics?
Aging.
Everybody does, you know. I can't believe that I'm that guy now. These people my age used to be those people. Now I'm those people. It's astonishing to me.
You look really good. Completely off topic, but yeah, I mean, since the last time I saw you, you look like you dropped 50, 60?
100 and...
more than 100?
Yeah, no, let's see. I got to 100, and then the doctor was so great, fucking doctor said, you need to put some weight on. What the hell are you talking about? It just said, you slow it down, you know?
Yeah.
Because I was so excited about it, because I've been walking like 3 miles a day and stuff. Because I have the time now, because I'm retired.
So what did you start at? What was your weight when you started?
Well, see, the thing that happened was and this is not a This is no excuse because I'm lazy sometimes, and I'm a hedonist.
No,
you know, I love to eat, and I was drinking. I wasn't, you know, never drank during the day, but I'd have 2 drinks at night. But they'd consume a liter of vodka.
Whoa.
You know, big,
Really?
big. Yeah, fuck yeah. 'Cause when I got divorced, I started medicating. You know,
Okay.
but then I got this stuff called polymyalgia rheumatica, and I thought I was dying. I thought I had Lou Gehrig's disease. I couldn't raise my arms. My whole body felt like it was on fire, and so the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. And so finally, the doctor said, "We're going to try something." So they gave me a shot, and the next day it was gone. I went back to the doctor, and I was in tears. Thank you. And he goes, no, hold up. Here's the deal. We finally figured out what it is. It's polymyalgia rheumatica.
Okay.
But the only way we can cure this is you're going to have to take steroids. You're going to have to take prednisone for a year, and it's going to really mess you up. And I put on like 150 pounds. Yeah, the same thing happened to Jerry Lewis before he died. He got really fat. Wow. And so because the prednisone just packs weight on.
But this was decades ago, right?
No. It was well, close to 2 decades. Yeah, it was in the probably in the early 2000s.
Okay.
But then I got big, and then I just had trouble, getting rid of it, and then I just, it's just like anything else, I just made the decision that it was I wanted to describe my weight on how many pallbearers I needed. I've gone from needing 12 now. I'm down to about 5 maybe or 4.
All right, yeah.
And if I get down to 2 or 3 pallbearers, I'll be back in the Olympics.
So when did you start? Like, when did you get serious about
2 years ago?
2? That's it?
Yeah. I really got serious about it 2 years ago.
Wow.
But I was a big fitness freak for a long time. I was running.
I remember you said you would snort an ounce.
No, not an ounce.
A gram.
Yeah, no. Here's what I would do. I'd smoke a pack of Winston's, snort a gram of Coke, and smoke
run 3 miles,
and then run 6 miles in Hancock Park. Yeah, usually it was 3, but 6. One night I remember I was so coked up I ran 6. I mean, I'm lucky my heart didn't explode.
Yeah,
I like to tell my students I only did Coke once for about 30 years. Yeah. But it's been a long time, and I have no desire. I mean, it's a horrible drug.
You would actually do that every night?
No, but there was a while there there was a while there that I was. Yeah, I mean, everybody in Hollywood was using, man. You'd walk into a casting office, and the casting director would dump a little pile on their desk, and you'd dump a little pile, and you see who had the best shit. It was crazy.
Are you exaggerating? Or
no, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, when I was working, I did an Alfred Hitchcock Presents movie, and the director was a pretty famous director, and he never came out of the trailer because he was in there getting brilliant, snorting his brains out. But it was great because I was killing it with overtime, so you just carry on. I remember one time I came out, Larry Wilcox was the guy on Chips who played Eric Estrada's partner, and one time when I was on Chips, I came out of my dressing room, out of my trailer, and he came out of his big trailer, and he sneezed. He went, achoo! He goes, "Oh man, that was expensive."
Who was it?
Larry Wilcox, the blonde guy on Chips. Yeah. I thought that's hilarious. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 years ago, you decided to get serious.
Yeah, man.
How'd you do it? I
went on an eating plan. It was called I can't remember what it was called, but they would deliver the meals, and I stuck with it, and it worked pretty well. It was called Bistro MD. And at the same time, I upped my exercise because I hadn't been exercising. I don't know where I lost my focus, but I did.
Yeah.
Part of it was, I think a part of it was taking on all this stuff from heartbroken actors when teaching it. I think it really started to mess with me a little bit. That's why when I retired, it was much easier. Like I got that Cougar fixed up, got my garage cleaned out, wrote the book, and gave birth to the twins I've been carrying around. So I'm back at it again. I've got a guy that's kind of managing my music and stuff, and we've got a bet on some weight loss. So I'm ready to get down another 30 or 40, and because I have 2 knee replacements. My left elbow screwed up from the gunshot wound, and my right shoulder's fouled up from pitching and tennis, and so I want to be light on my feet.
Yeah.
What's your deal? You look like, are you a personal trainer or something?
No. I've always been kind of a meathead, since like junior high. I've been lifting weights, doing fitness stuff for I mean.
You play any sports at Douglas? They had to make you get out and play something.
No, I regret that I never did. To be honest, I'm not much of an athlete really at all.
It's funny because you look like a textbook, you know.
Yeah, I can't shoot a basketball.
I know that.
Can't throw a ball either. Football, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
What were your hobbies?
I was a skater.
Oh, there you go.
And then I rode BMX.
Okay, yeah, those are the sports of your generation.
Yeah,
sure, my little nephew was a big BMX guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah, that was pretty much. I started training jiu-jitsu about 2.5 years ago. That's been. I've really enjoyed that.
I studied Taekwondo for a long time with a guy named Jun Chung, who was with Left Foot Wallace and Bill and Norris and all those guys. He was in that stable. He traded me karate lessons for English lessons. Lovely guy. Yeah. But this has been fun, man. You know, this is perfect. I appreciate you giving me a chance to.
You got to get out of here?
No, I don't. I'm just going to take another leak because this coffee you got me moving right through it.
Steve, the one thing that I wanted to ask you about here, to be honest, I feel like I don't. It's really none of my business.
Oh.
But I am curious because the way you're always so deferential to Charles Conrad and for what he taught you and all that. But this Charles Redux chapter where you say that he basically says, listen, I'd like you to take over the school. I think you'd be a great instructor, and by the way, I think you are. But then he wants you to buy the building and borrow the money, and then you never hear from him.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
He was German. He nobody's perfect, and he was a tough cookie, and once he got a burr in his saddle, and I think he thought in a certain way that not only could I take care of the students and be a good teacher, but he also thought that he could kind of, he had an edge on me or something, like that he felt like that. In business, he could do well because he had sold and got his building back 3 times because he would sell the business, but people didn't realize that Charles was the business. And once Charles left, the business would fall off, and so the people would give him a big down payment, and then he would.
You're saying he sold his acting?
Yeah, he sold his acting,
his coaching business,
the building and his coaching business 2 or 3 times before I entered the picture.
Okay,
So, I think, and also maybe he just thought that I was going to be able to buy the building, and this was all happening. I mean, I got the call almost just a very short time after I had to move out of my house into a single apartment because of my divorce. So it was the lowest point, financially, because I knew my kids were going to, we're going to have to split time, and so I knew that wasn't going to happen, and so I started making all these proposals to partner up because I only had one class. So for the 2 years or 3 years that I ran it for him, I was making $175 a week. Which is it says you can't really get ahead on that.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't expand the school for whatever reason. It was just one class.
Well, you were making $175, but then you were sending him.
Yeah, I would send him between $2 and $3 grand a month.
Yeah.
Profits out of the school, which is fine. It's his business.
Yeah.
But then I started proposing to partner up with him, where we would share that, and I would promote it, but the main thing he wanted me to do was buy his building, and that just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so when I got a job I write about it in the book. When I got a job in Vermont, I did a film with Morgan Fairchild and back there, and Michael Pere, who was a wonderful cat. He was an Eddie in the Cruisers. He's a very funny man. A good kid. He's not a kid anymore, Michael Pere, but he's a good guy. But anyhow, so I went back and I had a month, and I sat in that hotel, and finally I wrote him a letter and just said, look, my daughter's going to start college in 3 years. I need to make some money, so I'm going to go on my own. So
you said
I use what's that?
You said you wrote him, and you said that you got a scathing letter back.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Well, he just said, you have to look at the man in the mirror. It's like I betrayed him or something,
Yeah.
I approached him, every couple of years after that. I'd send him something, just saying, "Is the water under the bridge yet?" Because I'd send him cards that all my students signed, saying, "Thank you, Charles, for for keeping this going." But it just we never, nothing. No, and it's one of those things again that you just can't. The key to a lot of sort of Eastern religion is non-attachment. You have to just to be able to accept things the way they are. Because reflecting on it is what good will that do at this point?
Yeah, no.
There's the positive that came from it, and then there's some negative that came from it, and it's that. So you got the sign of the Tao. You got the yin and the yang.
I mean, were you guys like friends?
That's a good question. I know he liked me. And I loved him. To me, he got a big kick out of it because I used to call him Maestro because he was a master. A teacher, man, oh man. But he even when I was there, he was really involved with EST, Erhard sensitivity training, and that was a real wacky kind of Eastern thing where they would, they'd call you. We used to call them EST holes, because they would make you sit in these rooms and you couldn't even go to the bathroom. People would like strap tanks to their legs, and if you didn't get it, you were an asshole. And it was just really this esoteric stuff. Erhard sensitivity training. You can look it up. It's pretty funny. But he was really into that for a while. And
is that still a thing or not?
I haven't heard anything from Werner Erhard in a long time. Okay. I don't know. I didn't ever get that close to it. It seemed a little Scientology-esque to me.
Gotcha.
And please delete that because I don't want to die.
Did they ever try to rope you into that?
Not really. Although the guy that was in that movie about the pig, and he was also in L.A. Confidential, he's tall, skinny, pince nose glasses guy. I can't remember his name right now. I remember anyhow, he came to my school one time and he tried to tell my students they needed to come study with Milt Casellas, and that was a big Scientology scam. Not scam, but it was a Scientology center.
Yeah.
And I thought I invited him in. They were talking about some of the strike stuff, and the guy's trying to steal my students. So that's but no, I never had any contact with them. They do this thing, where they would bring perspective. Because actors, they a lot of times they're a little vulnerable anyway. They're not your giants of industry in a certain way. So they would have these things where you come in they would offer all kinds of classes. Every kind of class you could think of, they would offer. And it was all, if you look at the address, the Scientology Center.
Yeah.
And because recruiting is a big part. It's just like the same thing with Mormons. Recruiting is a big part with Mormons.
When I first came here, the building where I was living, the manager, she was an actor. And she was a little older, but she was full-blown Scientology. And she asked me if I wanted to go hang out with her and her friends one night. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I didn't know anything about Scientology at that point. So she picked me up, and then she dropped me off at the Scientology Center, and she left. So I was in their little orientation room, and they showed me like 3 hours of stuff, trying to recruit me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to be... back then I was different. These days I'd leave.
Yeah, sure.
What are you talking about?
Well, yeah.
What do you mean you're leaving me here? What are you talking about?
Right.
But just all kinds of weird stuff.
It is funny, man. That's one of the reasons that Prem Rawat always kind of kept on the down low, because there was a lot of weird shit going on back then. I remember the Rajneesh people. The ones would wear red, and they bought that land up in Oregon, and they tried to move all the people off the land, and they ended up stockpiling all these weapons, and then there was the Hare Krishnas, and they ended up going to Arkansas and bought a farm, and there was a couple of murders. I mean, there was a lot of weird kind of sects, going on at that time, So
right.
But I got lucky. I got a guy that said, "Try this, see if you like it."
Yeah. So what's his name?
Prem Rawat, Premrawat.
And then I thought I read that you referred to him as
Guru Maharaji. That's a Hindi term. It means Guru means a dispeller of darkness and giver of light, and Maharaji means great king.
And so this man has been a teacher since he was 12?
Well, actually 6. His father died when he was 6. He had 3 older brothers, but before his father died, he said Prem will be he will follow, because his father was on his deathbed, and so the devotees were very. And so finally, when he died, Prem, when he was 6 years old, said, "Why are you crying? I'm still here," And so that's when he started his mission. Basically, they had quite a following in India, but then some people met him in India. Actually, a lot of them were pot dealers, and they brought him to the United States when he was 12. Okay. And he spoke in Boulder, and then the second place he went was Tucson, Arizona, and I was living there at the time. And
he came over here by himself?
Oh no, of course not. No, his mother was with him, and
like they emigrated over here, basically.
No, he's still a citizen of India, as far as I know. His headquarters now is in Amaru, Australia. Okay, that's where his headquarters is. But it's worldwide. I mean, when I met him, he was speaking in an abandoned bowling alley, and there's like 40 or 50 people there, and
that's a pretty good crowd for an abandoned bowling.
Well, yeah, but it was sparse. But then he I could hardly understand him because his accent, his Hindi accent was really strong. Yeah. But he said one thing, and it just hooked me. He said, "Peace is within inside of you, and I can show you where it is." And I thought, well, that's bold. And then, so how do we do that? And he said, well, you have to come. And there was what they call a knowledge session after that, about 1 o'clock in the morning at this ranch out east of Tucson. And ironically, the ranch was called the Third Eye Ranch, which is hilarious because that's the third eye is the pineal gland, which is right between you. That's why Hindu people have a little dot there to remind them that that's the door of perception. And so I went and I received what they called received knowledge, which was just they showed me some techniques of meditation, and I didn't get it. Didn't about a year went by, and then fast forward,
I remember the conversation where your friend's saying, "But did you try it?
Did you try it?" Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah,
that's not it.
Yeah, it's not it. It was nice, but it was too simple. Like, that can't be the secret of whatever, because that's having a concept of what you think it's going to be. Yeah. And so then I was singing in Vail, and the guy that actually told me about him showed up, and he'd been working with Prem, and he took the summer off to work, and we found a little place, and he said, how's meditation going? And I said, that's not it. And he said, but did you try it? And I said, no, that's not it. Did you try it? And I went, oh, no. So then the next morning we meditated, and a combination of that and some great Laotian pot that we would smoke on the way into Vail. We'd ski all day, and I'd sing it. And it was the best gig I ever had. I would sing at this club in the evening.
All you can eat.
All you can eat crab legs, man, and they were the size of your forearm back then. Back then, they were huge.
Do you know a good place here? Because
I don't. Probably it's good that I don't, because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
But I'd like that if I could find some. Sometimes I get them. I try to get them from these Alaskan Fish Company things, or straight from a lab. But they're never. There's always a little bit of a disappointment.
We've been to like a couple of the casinos, but they're never any good.
Yeah.
They're so anorexic.
Well, what they do is they try to substitute snow crab. You can't hardly find any crab meat there. Yeah. But it's so ironic, man, because lobsters and crabs were considered like rats for the longest time, and now they're this great,
we were missing out.
Oh, what a delicacy!
Yeah. Well, you were mentioning something that I wanted to follow up with you about. What were you saying, Steve? So what kind of meditation is it? Do you have a what's the phrase?
Well, mantra? No, it's not a mantra meditation.
Okay.
It's just because this is the way it is, and I have no feeling about it one way or the other. But if this is what Prem wants, in order to receive these techniques, you have to pursue them. I'm not qualified to tell you what the techniques actually are. I'm not allowed to, and part of that is just because you tend to do this thing ahead of time, just to. It's kind of like preparing the soil, for planting, and so you have you just get some information, and then there's these people called initiators. If you want to do it, all you got to do is just go, and it's free, it doesn't cost anything. But there's if you just go online and just type in Prem Rawat, Rawat, Premwat. There's instructions on how how to receive knowledge.
So he's like a worldwide. Is he an author?
Unbelievable. Yeah, he's got books out now. Yeah, he got books out, and and he's received all of these. Like he has a prison program down in Texas that has cut the recidivism rate by like 3/4. You know, I mean,
is that right?
Yeah. I mean,
that's a big deal.
Oh, it's huge, man. It's huge. You know, it's huge. And you know, and he travels. I think he was in he was in Indonesia this past week. You know, he flies all over the world. It's called spreading knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I've already, you know, half-heartedly committed to one thing that you were associated with, you know, so many years ago, and I don't want to do that again willy-nilly. So I'm not. But almost everyone that I respect and admire, I think they do some form of meditation every day, and sometimes I wonder if it doesn't have different forms. Like, for instance, like the meditation you do, I don't know if I imagine you sit by yourself in like a quiet room and just focus on your breath.
Yeah, I'm in my bed. Yeah, I'm in my bed. You know, because I'm you know, I don't like my knees they don't bend as much as the. So that's the beauty of this. You don't have to contort yourself to do it. You can do it because it's all focusing within. Yeah,
I might be there before much longer. A couple of weeks ago, it popped a ligament in my knee.
Oh boy.
This is the other knee this was the unpopped knee. Now they both have been popped.
Yeah, Well, I like to say God only had 2 bad days, and that's when he invented female plumbing. Because boy, do they have problems. I feel so sorry for our sisters, man. That system it gives rise to a lot of difficulties for them, and the human knee. Complex. You know, he could have done. He must have had a hangover, or she must have had a hangover, whatever.
That was That was after lunch on the
exactly on the Italian auto line. That was buying an Alpha after lunch.
Yeah, but I don't know. Sometimes I've heard some people talk about like meditation as maybe they just go on a walk, and to be honest,
any effort you make in that direction will be rewarded.
Yeah,
but it's a good idea to find, you know, the kind bud. You know, we used to call back in the day the best weed, the kind bud.
You're talking to someone who's never tried.
Oh, good marijuana. For you. Then don't. You know, that's lovely.
Edibles.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Yeah.
But
that's lovely.
Well, it's really nothing. But I'm one of the few remaining, I think, that I've never tried anything.
No, I don't know. I guess if I had my druthers, you know, and hadn't grown up in the '60s, I probably would. I wouldn't mind seeing what living a completely sober life would be like. You know, I mean, I've had periods of it, but yeah. But you know, I do credit LSD with part of my spiritual awakening.
That's the one or maybe
mushrooms.
Yeah, that's the one.
Peyote.
I would consider doing that. Cause,
yeah, it's organic, man.
Yeah, and just the people that I've listened to that are proponents of that stuff. They say that it can be a really life-changing experience.
Absolutely, and you want to make sure you do it in a really controlled environment. Right. You know, with somebody who knows what it's like, and I always recommend a nice flowing stream. You know, be by a river, a little stream is just perfect. Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff with this. Ayahuasca, which is this South American thing. It sounds. I'd try it, but
I think I
would definitely, you know, set aside. I put myself in a secure environment before I tried it.
Yeah, I think I would be willing to pay whatever that, because people are going down there.
Yeah,
they're guided through the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think that might be worth.
You know that it's all a creation of the Creator. You know, I know that it awakened a greater awe in me, you know, about, you know, and that's one of the things that Prem said one time that I found really funny. You know, when he was about 14, he had just spoken at the House of Commons in England, and he came out, and the reporters, anyway, because everybody's cynical, and I understand, but fine, enjoy your cynicism, you know, it's cool. But they would say, oh, if you're this perfect master, show us a miracle if you're such a perfect master. And Prem said, hey, man, you see that tree over there? And the guy looks and he goes, yeah. And the guy goes, how many leaves are on that tree? And I goes, well, I don't know. And he goes, well, photosynthesis, there's your miracle.
Yeah. So these days, you still smoke weed if you
I don't smoke them. My lungs have been very good to me. I actually, I don't know why the hell I did it, but I smoked cigarettes for about 20 years, and just because it's all part about being a tough guy or being an actor. So I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
I got to admit, it looks cool.
It's cool. Not.
I know. But.
Yeah, but that's been 25, 30 years ago. So, but I just don't. I don't want my lungs. I don't need to abuse them anymore. I have access to some edibles that I that I self-medicate with, but they seem to. If I am an addict, I'm a high functioning addict, and it doesn't seem to be causing any deterioration that I can tell.
Yeah. Do you take them like before you go to bed, or just?
No, I take a. There's two kinds. There's indica and there's sativa. So I'll have a sativa lozenge in the morning, and then I'll have an indica. I like the sun in the morning and the moon at night. I was thinking of that song. And then indica in the evening.
Okay.
But I don't do it before I teach.
Yeah.
I've always felt like that. Okay. I always felt like that these kids are paying that kind of money. They need to get the straight scoop.
Some of the guys I train with jiu-jitsu, they actually get high before they train, and they say that it helps them kind of get into like a flow state.
Yeah. And, different people metabolize things differently. Some person, they smoke a joint, they just turn into have a paranoid zombie, and it's a horrible experience. And other people smoke it, and they can finally let go of their shoulders.
Yeah, I don't really. It's not that I think poorly of it. In fact, I heard someone the other day saying like, "Oh, it looks like marijuana can like really have a negative effect on your body." Or
if that's the case, I'm a mess.
Well, I was like, I don't know. I don't think there's been a single death ever.
No, man, no.
And I was like, I maybe it affects maybe like as an athlete, maybe it affects like your running capacity.
No,
or maybe not.
No, man. The fastest mile I ever ran was like a 5:30, which is pretty good for a civilian. Yeah, I was flying and I was barefoot.
Was that one of your crazy nights in Hancock Park?
No, that was actually when I was teaching high school. The track coach, these the traditional coaches, because I was teaching my tennis team yoga and stuff for stretching, and so they kind of made some crack about it, about my training regimen. I said, well, I can, you got some people I can run again. I was running a lot then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I flew, man. My feet were kind of sore afterwards, but
yeah,
it was. I did it for a long, long time.
Do you drink still?
No, that's.
Gave that up.
Do we? Yeah. I didn't know. Looking back again, I don't look back very often. The key is the eyes are in the front of the head for a reason. But but if I could change anything, I'd have drank less in my life.
Yeah.
But I was just medicating, man. I've come to grips with the fact I'm an addict. But I've come out the other side.
Yeah.
And I see the sun again. So.
Yes, I sometimes feel like I have some addict tendencies myself, but they're not very detrimental. But I definitely, kind of like the all or nothing thing. I don't know why I like that. It's something romantic about just going all in.
That's why people do rock climbing. That's why that's why they fight bulls, and that's why they do things that can end their life. That's why they, parachute jump, and it's we become. We want to. It heightens our experience. Yeah. And that's been people have been wanting to do that. I always think about the first guy that ever ate peyote, because it's the nastiest tasting shit you can ever eat, man. And this guy actually ate it, and wait a minute, this isn't too bad,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a great book called "The Teachings of Don Juan," a Yaqui way of knowledge that you would enjoy. I think.
Okay.
It's about this one guy's experience with peyote.
How long does that stuff take to kick in after you?
I don't know. It varies. It varies. My favorite trip I ever took is I ate 11 peyote buttons at the bottom of the Grand Canyon at a place called Havasupai Canyon, where these huge waterfalls are.
Okay.
And I did, and the Indians actually taught me a way to eat it where it didn't taste bad. It was so crazy. Peyote button has this little white powdery stuff on top, and that's strychnine. That's what makes you sick. That's what makes you throw up, because sometimes people throw up. So you cut that out.
Okay.
And you cut the button into quarters, and you put it on a rock. You spit on it, and you take another rock, and you grind it and spit on it and grind it. So you're actually chewing it outside your body. Okay. And then you roll it up in a little ball, put it on the back of your tongue, and wash it down with water, and it just So I did 11 buttons,
Whoa.
and I.
How big of a dose is that? Because it sounds
I can't.
huge.
It is. I'm sure. I mean, but they weren't big buttons. But I did 11 of them, and
Most people take one, right?
I don't know. I don't know what it is now, but they grow naturally. Most they used to, at least. A lot of them were ripped up. If they cut off the tops, they grow back. But a lot of people were just pulling them. But anyhow, so it's just a cactus. But so I did the 11 buttons, and I got in this lagoon at the base of Havasupai Falls, which is this 200-foot waterfall, and the water is the color of that foam. It's because it has this special mineral in it. And I got in that lagoon, and I didn't get out. I became an otter. I didn't get out for like 10 hours. I swam. That's still my favorite.
You were by yourself?
No, there were other people. If I had friends around.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was.
Because I've heard someone say if you're gonna do any sort of psychedelics, and you're gonna be around water, you might want to have someone else around to make sure you don't think you're a fish. And
well, that's the thing. It's good to have people. It's just good to have somebody with you who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Just because, I never had the urge to jump off a cliff, jump off a balcony or anything. But it did hit me. The first trip I took, I couldn't even talk. It was so powerful, and that was a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
I mean, my mouth would move and sounds would come out, but I couldn't make sense out of anything.
Yeah. Do you remember what the trip was?
Yeah, it was a purple hit of acid.
Yeah. No, I mean, do you remember what you saw, your visions?
No, I never. For me, it was always more of a body rush. More of a just like your heart's just opening up to the universe.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would get some visuals. I get some sparkly things now and then, but not too much. Well, of course, LSD was initially generated to help people with shell shock for the troops coming back from, and also they thought they could make a weapon out of it because it disoriented people. That's why it's a great group of people: Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, who became Baba Ram Dass, and R.D. Laing, the famous English metaphysical psychologist. They were all at this place called Millbrook in Massachusetts, under Harvard's supervision, and they were experimenting with LSD as a therapeutic for depression. And fast forward, this guy Hal Gefsky that I knew, he was great friends with Cary Grant, and I actually spoke on the phone with Cary Grant one time, probably one of my proudest moments. But Cary Grant was taking LSD to deal with. He swore by it to help because he experienced depression when he got older.
It's coming back around now.
Yeah, people they're actually going to let people. They're decriminalizing it, which is just astonishing.
I hope, but I saw something that the first trial. I don't know. Whoever's in charge didn't like it, and they were saying, "No, we need to do more studies." And of course,
yeah, sure,
but there seems to be a lot of promise.
Well, I tell you, the consciousness of the whole planet needs to be raised because we're, like I said, we're sawing off the limb we're sitting on, and hatred and the warfare. I mean, it's what the Hindus call Maya, which is this horrible illusion. People killing each other in the name of religion. It's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lost. And so it couldn't hurt. The way things are going, it couldn't hurt. The way we're destroying the environment and everything.
Yeah.
I played this game with my daughters when they were little. I said, "You're welcome." It's called "You're Welcome." It's global warming. You're welcome. Sexually transmitted diseases that can kill you. You're welcome. World economy in tatters. You're welcome. Our gift to your generation. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What do you think we should do?
I think we should meditate. I think we should recognize that we are, in geological time, we've been on this planet for 10 seconds, and it existed for eons before, it'll exist in eons afterwards. The main thing is to recognize that we are not what we think. We are not these structures of concepts and dogma, and what we are is we are the recipient of this pure and perfect energy that's beating our heart, and it starts when they pop us on the butt when we come out of the coochie, and that's a romantic way to put it. And it ends with the last. Thank you. That's what I do. It ends with the last exhale. The last exhale. And in between, we have moments like this with kindred spirits, and we speak from the heart, and it makes it worthwhile. I just if you spend your time worried about how evil and fucked up everything is, and you take it on yourself. That's really, and I'm not denying it. I'm not
Yeah.
hiding from it. I
know.
I'm not going to let it ruin the rest of my life. I've been fighting this shit since 1954 when Joseph McCarthy in 1950s got all these people fired in Hollywood, and it just evidently it's not a battle that's going to be resolved in my lifetime.
Yeah. Was that the LEX is on thing you mentioned?
Yeah. He named names, man.
What exactly what was it? The House on
House of HUAC, the House of Un-American Activities Committee, was formed.
What was that?
Well, Donald Trump's advisor, who was this attorney named Roy Cohn, was 26 years old, and he was
involved in that.
He created it. He's the original self-hating Jew. Unbelievable. He gay man too, and self-hating, and he got a hold of Joseph McCarthy, who was this schlub from Wisconsin, a senator, and they started this big commie scare, this whole Red Scare thing, and all these people lost their houses, some of them went to prison, because in the 30s communism, it was coming out of the Depression. Communism looked pretty good because we saw what happened when the oligarchs took over, and that was caused the Great Depression. So there were a lot of people, because the entertainment people they tend to have big hearts. They were involved in these little cells in New York, but then when Stalin took over, they all said, this is stupid, this is great. So they left it, but then these assholes took what they did in their youth and used it against them when they were in their 50s. And I knew one of the guys, that Ring Lardner Jr. I met him. He wrote. He got banned. He got banished, and he lost his house in Santa Monica. And his wife was last name was Francis, and her name was Francis. And she knew Charles. And when she came up to me one time and she said, I understand you work with Charles Conrad. And I said, yes. And she said the most incredible thing. She said, simple home cooking, simple home acting. Man, it just chokes me up to this day. Yeah. But he finally wrote the screenplay for Spartacus under a pen name. And Kirk Douglas actually stood up. Douglas wasn't perfect, but in this moment he was. He stood up and he told them that you're going to use your real name. And he wrote the screenplay for MASH. I'm sorry, not for Spartacus, for MASH, the movie. And so Kirk Douglas said, "Yeah, use your real name." And that's when he won the Academy Award for the screenplay. And he hated the movie. That's so funny. He hated the movie. He thought the movie didn't do his screenplay justice. But yeah, so that's been going on for a long time, and Roy Cohn went on to be Donald Trump's advisor in his early days in New York. That's Roy Cohn gave us Donald Trump, basically. And now you know who his Roy Cohn is Stephen, Stephen. God, the guy that looks like goddamn Goebbels from.
Is it Miller?
Yeah. Boy, there's an evil son of a bitch.
I was listening to they were doing not a press conference, but it's like when they're in the Oval Office or whatever, and there's press there, and they were talking about this Abrego Garcia guy that they sent to Salvador.
Yeah.
And
without due process. That's the
yeah. And man, honestly, it was hard to track down what the real info was, because there was so many stories that
that's what the fascists do. They confuse you. Yeah.
Well, especially on like Twitter or X, it's like
X did. Yeah, actually,
it's tough.
Well, that's because what the dick owns it.
No, but I mean, even going back into like COVID days, there was so much misinformation on there.
Yeah. Well, what they have to do. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
But they have to discredit science. Education generally. That's why they're attacking the House of the Education, not closing down the Education Department. Yeah. Educated people will not follow fascists. And so it's textbook, man. What's going on? It is so textbook. You look at this 2025 plan, and the thing is, Democrats are not as smart as Republicans. We're better people, I think, in terms of empathy and caring about our fellow beings, but they're not as smart as Republicans. Republicans are smart motherfuckers, and they know how. If they want to bring this shit down, they can bring it down.
See, I don't know. I remember thinking the opposite. I remember thinking like back in when COVID and all that stuff was going on, the BLM and all that, and it was like I felt like, man, this has been like really well orchestrated. Like these guys are smart the way this, because you know, after the fact, man, a lot of that stuff got just like dismembered for being like false. And like,
Well, it depends on who you're listening to.
well, but I mean,
Yeah. Who told you? Who told you the COVID shit was bullshit?
No,
Who told,
but
yeah,
Steve, even like the lab leak theory. That turned out that wasn't racist. That's actually what they think caused it now. And
that's what they think. Which they are you referring to?
No,
though?
but that's universal now.
Well, now, here again.
Wait,
listen. I defend unto death your right to say it.
Okay.
But this is
Well, let me hear your thoughts. I guess
I just know that I just look at the people they put in charge now. The Secretary of Education thinks that AI is steak sauce. You know, Bobby Kennedy has a worm in his brain, and he thinks that people shouldn't be vaccinated. You know, and I know you can make a case for that, but I'm not really. I don't want to hear it anymore, just because I know what happened in Togo, where you know like 193 people died of measles. You know,
I think so. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get into this, but because I feel like it's really hard to have like these issues they're so deep. It's really, unless you're a professional journalist, it's really hard. Like I when I walk around and like in my everyday life, I feel like I'm a little more well informed than most, and even I am like I'm pretty nervous to get into any specific issue because, like, just to go back to this Abrego thing, there were like people on blue checkmark people, which means nothing now, going back and forth like. He was like convicted twice of being an MS-13, and then over here it's like, no, that's like that was BS. Like that was a what do they call it? An informant that was like unreliable. So it seems like that's true. It seems like this guy was not MS-13. But man, there were
misinformation. That's what you read about Goebbels.
But it's tough because. There's so many people like speaking so confidently and loudly, like whatever it is they believe, and so just to get back on this, like the lab leak theory and stuff like that. I certainly don't consider myself an expert, but I think even people who predominantly were like thinking, hey, this is kind of like a racist idea that this originated in China. I think even most of them are like, nah, it looks like this was actually where it came from.
Oh, I think a lab leak. Yeah. I mean,
just that one detail.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're referring to something else.
No, I'm just the overall climate. You know, I mean, there's people that still contend the Earth is flat.
Yeah,
and they're absolutely convinced of it, and they will go to their graves being convinced of it, and that makes sense. And like. My dad used to say, Steve, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's very funny if you think about it. That's pretty funny, you know. And so I never absolutely can say that I know what is going on because I'm in the same fucking stew that you are.
Yeah.
But when you look at the results of whose ox is getting gored now. Well, it's science. You know, they're trying doing their best to get away from science. They've shut down the National Institute of Health. And education. They're closing down the national education. You know, which is private schools are going to be the new segregation, you know, there's going to, you know, that's going to be happening, but with the moneyed class. So, you know, and so public education funding is going to go down. And so that people, the healthcare system in this country is probably the most abominable healthcare system on the planet today, given the amount of wealth we possess.
Yeah. That's,
you know, it would be out. You know, it's sort of a Rorschach test for me. Yeah. You know, you think that because you're sick, you should lose everything. You and I have a problem, and that's a big part of it. Of them restructuring the tax codes. They don't have to pay for you know. And I know there's corruption in welfare, and I get it. But you don't think there's corruption at the top of the financial food chain, then you're living in a fucking dream.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You know, my kind of litmus test for for when I'm listening to someone.
I said Rorschach. That's probably that's just how crazy it is. Yeah, litmus is the word I was looking for.
I thought you just had you. I bought it.
Well, I'm an actor. That's everything an actor says is suspect because you can be very convincing and yet wrong.
But it's just like, is someone being sincere when they talk? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like I said, it's really hard to have every single fact nailed down, like boom, 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 you know. But if someone is, when they talk to someone, when they engage in conversation, discourse, if I feel like they're at least telling the truth, you know, then that's, for me, that's like, okay, I'll listen to what this person has to say, you know. And because if later it comes out that, hey, what I said before, that was wrong, they'll admit it.
Like, yeah, that's right, man. That's
to me, that's a big thing. Like, hey,
well, there's this thing. There's a thing you touched upon. Probably the most essential thing is a thing in fascism called the big lie. And if you say something long enough, people start to believe it, you know. And you can watch it happening. I don't know if this kid that got sent to El Salvador without due process, we would have found out if he was in MS,
right.
You know.
That's right.
But I do know the minute that they found out that he was there, you can just watch it. Everybody in that Republican Party is saying exactly, it's like they have these bullet points that they all start talking about. It's like this huge flow of misinformation just because people are gullible, you know. And and I'm probably as gullible as the next guy. But if I want to err, I want to err on the side of the poor and the disadvantaged. If it's altruistic or whatever, what the fuck it is, I prefer to be there, you know. I don't.
I don't disagree with that.
I know. You're not a disagreeable person. I don't think I am either. Although I do get my dander up when people start talking about how certain things that are really destructive for my country that I love so much are good for the country. Like the tax code going from, not that it was great under Eisenhower, who was a Republican, from 89% down to 23%, and then where they pay no taxes a lot because they're able to get, you know, to me, if people start saying that's an improvement and that's how it should be, and then I see people, if we were the only Western nation that doesn't have universal health care, and then we're the only Western nation that has a huge homeless problem, you know, then I have to say, well, it's good for people that you like to emulate, perhaps, but those aren't the people that I want to emulate.
So, see, when I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, I don't even know how all this stuff is connected. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily understand how, you know, the super rich becoming even more super rich, and, you know, the tax code being what it is. I don't understand how that necessarily relates to, you know, the homeless problem or universal health care. I mean, I guess if we're going to just, like, would it just be like, well, this guy made $100 billion and paid zero tax, where if, you know, it was a different way, we would have had like $25 billion of his dollars to put to work? Is that kind of how it?
Well, it's just, you know, it's just an allotment of resources. You know, if you feel like it's important that people that have 200 million have 300 million, then you know, you go for it. But that's not that's a finite. You know, that'll reach a point where tierra o muerte, because and one of the things that I find most, it's Schadenfreude, which means, you know, taking pleasure in others' pain. But a lot of the people that voted for the fucking Trump regime are now getting screwed, you know, and they didn't know that was going to happen, you know. And so, but that's that's the scorpion and the frog, you know, because he's a scorpion.
So I voted for him in 2024. I didn't, the last election I voted in before this was, I think it was Bush in 2000 or whatever. And I think it's because my mom, I was living at home and my mom handed me a ballot. She said, hey, this is who you're voting for. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't vote in any other elections up until then, but man, I was like, the reason I went up in 2024 was, I just thought, like, well, number one, it was pretty clear that, like, Biden, cognitively, he was not in a great place. Do you disagree?
Oh yeah. Oh sure. He just got back from Russia when he screwed up. He did debate. Yeah. I disagree. I think Donald Trump is much more challenged in his mental acuity than Joe Biden was.
Well, maybe you think he's like more dumb or like does boneheaded things, but like, do you really think?
No. Yeah. Sure.
But
yeah.
Steve, Biden was like. He was like,
yeah, that was the party line, man. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What?
Well, yeah, he's old. I get it. I get it.
But did you not see the signs of like cognitive decline in his appearances? Did you watch the debate?
I see it in myself. Yeah. Oh yeah. The debate I'm talking about. He had just done a huge trip overseas, and he brought him back, and he was just wiped out, and he's old. I get
Steve,
it.
I don't think that's the case.
We can agree to disagree, and the point is.
You're nothing like what he sounded like.
I know, but see, the thing is that it's a moot point. I mean, now what I'm saying is, you voted for him, you got him, and now we'll see what happens.
You know what, you're right.
And then people are still talking about Joe Biden. You won. So it's a moot point.
If you were to ask me like, why did you vote for him? I think I would just be like, man, every time I listened to Kamala Harris saying something, it was just. I don't know. She just has like a loathsome quality about her, and I don't know. Again, I'm not a politico, but definitely
loathsome. That's great. So wait, I just want to savor this for a second. So Kamala Harris is loathsome, and Donald Trump is not.
Well, he's certainly. I mean,
you grab him by the pussy, Donald Trump. The one who wants to sleep with his daughter, Donald Trump. The one that has 4 wives.
Hold on, sleep with his daughter?
Which he said. When she said, when my daughter, if my daughter wasn't my daughter, I'd sleep with her. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's weird.
I mean, loathsome. Yeah.
Well, that's worse than.
Yeah. Oh, and that's just the beginning. I mean, they got some piss tapes on him from Russia. I mean, now if you want, we're best friends with with. I mean, it's all good. The thing is that, and this is why I don't spend a great deal of time having these discussions. It's just because I have lost some of my dearest friends because I cannot abide what they condone for this country that I grew up in, based on my 77 years on the planet. And everybody says, oh, you should be bigger than that. Well, I'm not bigger than that. I mean, because it brings what I do is, and I think this is something I think you can do too, or anybody can do this. I just keep the 3 square feet around me free from sexism, racism, homophobia. What else?
Well, there's a lot of words we could add to that.
Well, yeah. Just
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I so this. But it doesn't change the fact for me that I find you to be an upstanding young man, and I think you're a man of serious a serious thinker, and I think that you.
Now you're gonna hate me for saying this, but in this particular instance, I do try.
Okay? It's apparent, man. It's apparent. I could tell that even in our early communication about. I knew that we were going to have differences, but I
think that's good. I know. Yeah, I know that some people don't want to be around it, but let me finish. Hold on.
I need to do that.
I think it's good because I really think that the people at the top of the Republican Party and the people at the top of the Democratic Party have most of their followers kind of tricked, and I think because I don't really consider myself like far right, or honestly I kind of feel like I'm pretty like moderate. I mean,
if you believe in a woman's right to choose,
the abortion thing is a tough one for me because one of my best friends when I moved here was a gay guy. Him and his partner. I was closer to Daryl than to his partner Neftali, but he broke it down to me. He's like, dude, I hate the idea of abortion, just because on some level I do kind of feel like it's killing a baby, but he's like, it's her right to choose, and he made a good argument, and I was like, I don't know, I don't like it. I mean, The one reason I don't like it, I'll say this, I don't feel like, I kind of feel like it's a way to get out of a responsibility. It's different. Hold on. It's different if
it's a rape victim.
No, that's different.
That's 100% different. That's degrees. Yeah. But my take on it again is just that. See, and this is where I'm at. In order to have an opinion about this, you should have a uterus.
See, I don't agree with that.
I know that's all right. That's all right. That's what makes this country great. Yeah. But I'll say it to my dying death. I had to go through an illegal abortion with a girlfriend of mine when I was in college, and it was a nightmare. Yeah. And we were, and plus, again, the people, everybody who's so anti-abortion, they don't give a shit when the poor kid is born and they're on their own.
I don't want to be a heartless prick. I really don't. It's again, any sort of abuse, incest, come on, that's messed up. No one should be forced into carrying that baby to term. That's messed up, But adults who I don't know, forgot to be on the pill or it's just, I don't know. I'm not really hard line either way, but if someone asks me, it's man, this does kind of feel like killing a baby, even if it's a little embryo or something. That's kind of the one thing that it's hard for me.
How do you feel about capital punishment?
I guess I'm pretty much, depending on the crime. Yeah, I guess I'm for it.
So again, they're just dichotomies that arise. I mean, you're either for killing or you're against killing. And again, but
there's some gruesome killers out there that kind of
and also, like 1 in 4, that's probably too many, but a significant minority of the people that are killed are people from minorities of low income, and a significant percentage of those are innocent. So if just there's a chance that even one innocent guy is going to get killed, I feel like that lock them up for the rest of their life. Anyhow, we should let's. I think it'd be probably good to change the subject.
Are you getting upset?
No, well, no. It's an environment that it makes me sad. How about that? It just makes me sad. Right. And
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I can live with it. I mean, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend unto death your life. Your right to say it.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
I feel the exact same
way. We can leave it at that. Life experience shapes us in some ways, and I acknowledge the fact that I'm probably liberal to a fault. I'm somewhere to the left of Trotsky.
I don't know.
Trotsky. Well, that's interesting, man. Trotsky was one of the 3 guys that did the Russian Revolution, and he was much more centrist. He wanted to collectivize the farms, but he wanted it to be voluntary. Whereas Lenin made them collective, and that caused all these famines in Ukraine. But so Trotsky was if there's such a thing as a altruistic communist, he was altruistic communist. I'm not I don't even know what the fuck that means at this point, but
I'm not sure I know what it means either.
Yeah, I just do know that as long as and it's all coming to pass. It's all going to be its own reward. I'm in a way when Trump won, I thought, well, okay. Just we'll see.
Exactly.
Now we'll see. Now we'll see. Is the world going to be a better place because he's in it? And he's running it, or is it not going to be? And then we don't have to have discussions about it anymore because the truth of the pudding is in the tasting. But but even this part of the interview was fun, man. I mean, I respect your opinion, because I respect your right to have an opinion, and I know you respect my right to have an opinion.
I do, yeah.
And I think we just leave it at that, because there's these absolutes, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. So there's these absolutes that happen. Like, for example, you consider Biden to be, demented or frail, whatever it is. Yeah. And I considered him to be an old man who had made mistakes, but was much better than the alternative.
Yeah.
Because he cared about the people that I care about.
Yeah. I didn't mean to summarize his entire service into just that one thing. That was just the one issue.
Sure. Understandable. Yeah. Understandable.
Frankly, he did seem like he was really sharp. Like when they showed clips of him debating, in 2016 and 2020. Yeah, it was night and day. But anyways, Thank you for coming on, Steve.
Hey, man,
Steve
my pleasure, man. My
Yeah.
pleasure. I mean, it was, and thank you for being so generous with letting me prattle on about this, because I have, for some reason, like I think I told you, I would practice signing my autograph when I was in 7th grade. I can remember doing that, and somehow, and a lot of it just again had to do with being willing to let go of one thing before you grab onto the next thing. That meaningful coincidences thing. Like I say in the book, my dream came true, and I could have had a better dream, maybe, like solving global warming or, a cure for cancer or something. But this is what I dreamt, and now I'm sitting there having a conversation with a colleague, and you do a great job, man. I can tell your podcast, I bet it does very, very well, because you're such a serious gentleman about it. You really. You
deserve it. You deserve the respect. I didn't want to come in here completely empty. I will say that out of respect for the principles you live by in Choiceless Awareness, it was hard. I was fighting off the tendency to have this conversation by myself in practice.
Right.
Up to this.
Yeah, and that's something.
I was like, Steve would not approve of this.
Say fuck you.
I gotta just calm down and
trust it, man.
Yeah. I mean, I prepared a little because
sure you did. I see that. Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
But I definitely wasn't rehearsing my intros or.
Well, it was so funny because I did one of these with God, I can't remember. He played the pilot in Con Air. Wonderful guy, like fucking Cajun crazy man. He was the one that was naked in that movie about the wine country where Paul Giamatti went up with his buddy was getting married, and they went up to. It was a pretty successful movie, but anyhow,
I like Paul Giamatti. I don't know when you're talking about.
It was about wine country and stuff. But anyhow, we did one of these, and goddamn, the producer had him, so it was like he wasn't even. He was so busy figuring out what the questions were going to be. He wasn't even listening to the answers, and I felt bad for him. I mean, it was fine. What is his name? He's done a lot of stuff.
You said he was the pilot on Con Air?
Yeah. He Swamp Thing. He was the one that gets on the plane and flies the plane.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how long did that one go? Was it like?
Oh, the filming?
No, the interview you're talking about with this guy.
Oh, no, not near. Like maybe a fourth of what this was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw some. I saw some like clips on YouTube, but it was mostly you at like movie premieres. Just giving a quick little rundown.
Right, yeah, and then there's a couple of things where that it's online about me. So my beginning class lectures. There's a couple of those that are on.
Yeah, watch those.
Yeah. But even those, I watch those now, and I go, Jesus Christ, who's that fat fuck?
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I imagine you feel a lot better.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's life affirming. It just. But in a way, it's kind of funny because I feel like I've been, how they wear training resistance suits, they put weights on your legs and weights on your ankles and on your arms, for workout. I've been wearing a body suit of weight training for, about the last 20 years. And so now, my body's going, ooh, there's still a little muscle under here. Not much, but still a little muscle.
Yeah, no. Definitely.
Well, good, man. I look forward to seeing what you do with this, and because this was very enjoyable.
For me as well. Honestly, I really enjoyed having you on here, and you're welcome back anytime to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Thanks,
Steve.
man.
100%.
Thank you.
All right.
Perfecto.
I'm gonna shut this down. Thank you, Steve. It really means a lot. Again,
Yeah. One hand thanks the other.